Good morning. It is 6:20. It is Monday, January 12th. Actually, it's 13th. Pardon me. January 13th, 2020. Welcome to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester, the train station radio station, or as some prefer, the radio station at the train station. Welcome to the program. It is 37 degrees under broken clouds right now. We're going to get up to 47 today. We'll be back with the weather in just a few minutes. Remember, if you are still in bed, although if you do this, you probably don't have the program on, but if you don't, if you're listening through some other way and you want to know, how can I get the program when I first get up? Well, go to MyTuner Radio and tell MyTuner Radio to download the app, Mornings with Bob Marrone, or RadioWestchester.com. And then when you get up in the morning, you just tell Alexa, put on RadioWestchester.com. And we'll be there. Good morning. Here are our headlines on this day, Monday, January 13th, 2020. A 14-year-old is facing sexual assault charges in New Rochelle at the high school. Investigators are offering a reward in the Yorktown hate crime vandalism that occurred there. And in Spring Valley, a woman who died in police custody was reportedly, that case that is, under review. The daughter of the Muncie man stabbed starts a GoFundMe page to help pay for medical bills. A Yorktown man is accused of driving without a license. We've got to find out why. Officials found a body in the Harriman State woods. Meanwhile, records are showing that Westchester discussed the end of Playland deal before the dispute emerged. We'll ask George Latimer about that at 7:20. Once again, welcome to the program. We're going to go right now to the weather. Now, as you know, the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. Our forecast today, right now, it's 37, but it's mainly cloudy and much cooler than over the weekend, where we got up in the mid-60s, but still above average with highs around 43. Tonight, mostly cloudy with lows around 35. Normal average low equals 18 degrees, by the way, just so you know. And tomorrow, morning breaks of sun, then scattered rain showers developing during the afternoon, highs around 45. Wednesday, a mixture of sun and clouds. The high will be 52, the overnight low 36. We'll take you to Thursday. Morning rain, a lot of rain lately, then partly sunny. The high will be 45 degrees. Can you imagine in years gone by we would be inundated with snow? Or so it seems. Okay, the top of the hour is brought to you by the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio. They're recording with us now. The law firm of Payne & Kahn, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and Dominic's Fine Cigars. And remember, Dominic's Fine Cigars will be bringing you the pick of the week, Jake's results. He had an interesting weekend picking the four games and getting us to the conference finals, which got away to about 8 o'clock and 8:20, and then we will do all of that. But right now, we're going to get to our local stories. A 14-year-old student in New Rochelle is facing charges stemming from allegations of sexual assault within the New Rochelle School District. This from News 12 Lohad, Talk of the Sound. As News 12 has previously reported, the sexual assault allegedly happened between two students at the high school. A letter was sent home to parents Wednesday calling the allegations, quote, extremely concerning. Officials still have not released a time frame of when the alleged assault took place. No further information is being released on the charged 14-year-old. We'll be talking with Bob Cox later in the program, who did a lot of the early work on this story. We turn our attention now to Yorktown. Investigators there are offering $2,500 in reward to find the person or persons wanted for a string of vandalism linked to hate there in Yorktown. This in News 12 today. Several houses of worship have been vandalized since the start of the year. Police have released a photo of a black four-door sedan seen leaving one of the crime scenes. We have a phone number for you, so get out your pen, your pencil, your crayon. Anyone with information is asked to contact the New York State Crime Stoppers at 866-313-TIPS, TIPS that is. That's 866-313-TIPS. TIPS. And yes, I got a cold. God knows who gave it to me. A pox on them. All righty, let's continue. It is 6:27. The death of a Spring Valley woman who was tased while in police custody early Saturday morning is reportedly being investigated by the state attorney general's office and the Rockland County DA. This in News 12 today. Police released a statement Monday saying that the woman was trying to attack people and smashing car windshields when they were called to the apartment complex of Fred Heck Drive. When police arrived, they say the woman appeared to be on drugs, but they say surveillance video also showed the woman had a temporary seizure just before they arrived. Nikki Cohen, the daughter of the Monty stabbing victim, Joseph Newman, sat down with News 12 for the first time since the brutal attack on her father, and I have to sneeze, so you got to live with this, but I'll play a little music for you. That's a beautiful classic piece, by the way, that some people use in weddings these days as well, particularly for the procession. It is canon in D. Sorry, you can't stay there because we're still doing the news. It is 6:29. You're listening to Radio Westchester. I'm fighting a cold, so you will deal with it with me, hopefully, and thank you for plugging through as we will do. And to get back to this story, Nikki Cohen, the daughter of Monty stabbing victim Joseph Newman, sat down with News 12 for the first time since the brutal attack on her father. Newman is currently clinging to life at the Westchester Medical Center, and we thank News 12 for this story. He was the most critically injured of the 6 victims who were attacked during Hanukkah celebrations last month. The 72-year-old remains unconscious with a broken skull and shattered arm. She says medical costs are rising quickly, so she created a GoFundMe page for her father. The money will go towards medical bills, with more than $13,000 raised in just days. Her goal is to raise $250,000 for her father's costs. And again, that out of News 12 today. Back to Yorktown, police say a man there is accused of driving without a license. News 12, thank you. Officials say earlier this week, 44-year-old Louis Russo was pulled over for having an expired state inspection. They say a further investigation found that Russo was driving with a revoked license and without an ignition interlock device. Duh. He's due back in court later this month. News 12 gave us the story. It's incomplete in that if they're saying he had no ignition interlock device, generally speaking, although the story doesn't say, that is an interlock device for people who've been previously arrested for DWI or I believe convicted, but that is all we know right now. Another story out of 12 this morning. A body has been found in the woods at Harriman State Park in Suffern by a father and his children. Officials say the father and kids found the body of a man about a mile into the woods while riding an ATV off-road. It's not clear how long the body had been there or how the person died. First responders took about 3.5 hours to get the body out of the area. The only access point into the woods was behind 8 Regis Court in the village of Montebello. An unattended ATV was found not far from where the man's body was located, but it's unclear if the vehicle is connected to the body. Thank you, News 12. Now, a story we've been covering for months and months, some new information from Mark Lungriello, and this came out on Friday, but we didn't get a chance to really get into it. Westchester County officials wanted out of a contract with the would-be manager of Rye Playland months before they accused the company of breaching the deal, according to court records. County Executive George Latimer, spokeswoman, shared internally a draft statement that said Latimer wanted to terminate the 30-year contract with Standard Amusements more than a year before his April 2019 announcement. He was ending the deal, according to recently released court records, or that was his intent. A separate email indicated that Latimer's staff coordinated with Catherine Parker, a county lawmaker, on Parker's talking points ahead of the March 2018 news conference, where she called on Latimer to end the deal. But those communications took place 2 months before a report analyzing the contract by Latimer's staff. Catherine Chaffee, his spokesperson, that is Latimer's, denied that the administration planned to get out of the contract before it said it would. We speak with George Latimer at 7:35, I should say, this morning. Back to Spring Valley we go. This story out of Aloha today. One day after the death of Vanel Edouard, the Spring Valley community has strengthened in numbers. Around 100 people attended a vigil for the beloved school security guard over the weekend. Those gathered took an extra lap around the track behind the high school. Edouard, who worked for the East Ramapo Central School District since the early 2000s, died in a house fire early Saturday morning in Hillcrest. Edouard was remembered as a father figure, someone who wasn't afraid to give tough love, and someone who was always considered a friend first and a coach and security guard second. That out of Aloha again. Godspeed to that man. Now, now this is a story without a timestamp. It's unusual, but nonetheless, we wanted to share it with you. Acting State Supreme Court Justice Catherine Cholakis ruled that the State Public Health and State Health Planning Council, overstepped its authority last September when it issued a ban on e-cigarettes and e-liquids flavored with anything other than tobacco or menthol. In a ruling issued last week in Albany, Cholakis said regulating the vaping industry is a job for the state legislature, not the executive branch, whose function is to implement policy set by lawmakers. Wow, I don't agree with the conclusion here, but that is refreshing. The emergency ban was challenged by the Vapor Technology Association, an industry group, and two of its member businesses. The judge granted their request for an injunction against enforcing the ban. A little bit of commentary about that, 634. I should think that an executive, and this goes back to some of the things that Mr. Trump, President Trump has done, and it needs to be respected even when we don't agree with the decisions, which is that there are times of emergency, national or state emergency, when an executive order needs to be done in lieu of the legislature, simply in the interests of time and the public good. I know I sound like a lawyer, but it seems reasonable to me and my tiny brain. We're going to go to sports right now, and then we'll come back with more local, or rather regional stories and national stories. So first, let's go back to the weather, and we will do that directly. No, don't play. I don't care if you play. Go ahead. I like that. Dun-dun-dun. It's ominous, isn't it? But the weather really isn't ominous today. It's down to 31. I love the way the weather gets colder. It was 37 when we opened the news this morning. It's 31. We're going to get up to 47 today. Broken clouds right now. Mainly cloudy throughout the day. Much cooler than over the weekend, but still above average with highs about 43. And that appears to be the way the week is going to be as well. Tonight, mostly cloudy with lows around 35. Normal average low, 18 degrees. Tuesday, morning breaks of sun, then scattered rain showers developing during the afternoon. Highs around 45. Wednesday, a mixture of sun and clouds. The high will be 52. Thursday, morning rain, then partly sunny. The high will be 45. The overnight low will be 25. And Friday, we'll go to Friday for you now. Mostly sunny skies. The high will be 30 degrees. The overnight low will be 24. And the weather is brought to you exclusively by our friends at United Hebrew in New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And as we head into the bottom of the hour, we're also supported this morning by Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne and Kahn, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and don't forget Dominic's Fine Cigars. They will be bringing you the results of Jake's Picks and Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road. Actually, that's incorrect. I got to fix that address. Located at Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days, and you will hear from the officials for those results, although we're going to give the results right now in a little more than 1 hour from now. Now, I had the scores. Oh, yeah, they are. Here we go. I still have to give the scores as we go on to sports now. Of course, we had some local sports going on, too. Why don't we get them out of the way? The Nets defeated the Hawks. This is basketball by a score of 108 to 86. And the Devils defeated one of the best teams in the league by a score of 3-1. And this is no small thing because the other item in the news regarding sports was that even as they've won 2 of their last 3 games, or is it 3 of their last 4, the Devils fired their general manager. And by the way, they never sell out. Only 14,000 people of the 16,000 that rink holds show up to games anymore anyway. So maybe they fired him for all kinds of good reasons. As you can see, we're very, we share this with you because we're on TV. This isn't behind the scenes, In fact, the TV that you're watching is either Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, my own page, bobmarrone.com, Periscope. We're on Spotify now, or we will be, I'm sorry. We certainly are on iTunes. Welcome to the program. Let's get to those football scores. The Titans defeated the Ravens by a score of 28-12. That's an upset by anybody's standards, and we'll be talking with Jake about that at 8 o'clock. The 49ers defeated the Vikings by a score of 27-10, and the Chiefs, my goodness, with the 51, was it 51? I got so crazy with this when I lost track, but I do believe it was 51-31. I wrote 59 here, but I think I'm just crazy. 51-31. What an incredible game. Although to give up 31 points, they better be very careful in the conference championship. And the Packers, what was a nail-biter towards the end, 28-23. Aaron Rodgers made a couple of late passes that just locked it in. They could not get the ball back to the Seahawks. Or rather, the Seahawks were unable to hold the Packers and they would have gotten the ball back one more time to make it a better game. So the Packers, in the end, prevail over the Seahawks by a score of 28-23. Okay, let's get into some of the regional news. Now, I got to tell you, this stuff is driving me nuts. It's driving everybody nuts. The governor really blew it the other day. This is nice being able to just give my honest opinion about this stuff. Not that I couldn't before, but there were just certain things that were out of format. So that's no knock to my former employers. It's a different format. This format is a lot more opinion-oriented. Jared Woodbury was shocked when he was arrested and then released, despite being the suspect of 4 bank robberies, thanks to the state's controversial new bail reform initiative. What were they thinking, he said. This is the actual guy. He said upon being sprung. The next day, cops said Woodbury, 42, allegedly robbed a 5th bank in Brooklyn. And it's right there on the surveillance camera. You can't make it up. It's like that other thing, the judge saying, well, you were not within your rights. Let people die so that, you're not within your rights to stop people from killing themselves. Well, I get it, Judge, but I think we need to be a little more, if we're going to give you judge's discretion, and we want to, you better have a working forebrain. If the governor issues or the president issues an executive order that clearly is because of an emergency, I'm sure there is. There must be some sort of a mechanism in the law that would allow a president or a governor to say this is in the national good. I am doing this this executive order as an emergency. So I really don't know, and this has to do with them with overruling the law about vaping. The vaping's a new thing. Would you like to verp with me? Is that like twerking? Or is verping a combination of vaping and twerking at the same time? I don't know either. All righty. And then there was the other one. A homeless man who was cut loose without bail Friday, despite allegations of beating up 2 women in unprovoked attacks hours apart. Well, Eugene Webb is the latest defendant to be let out on supervised release under the state's newly imposed bail reform. Maybe, you know what? Maybe they gave him tickets to the Knicks. He said, I'm going back to crime. I'm not going to any Knick games. Are you crazy? I'd rather steal and, and and vandalize and rape or whatever. Anyway, Webb 26 is accused of randomly punching a 23-year-old woman in the face about 6 a.m. on Wednesday in the Village. That's Greenwich Village, by the way. He allegedly hit her so hard that one of her teeth was knocked out by the blow. The first incident charged in the defendant's new case took place on West Houston Street, a little over a mile from the courthouse. Now, why am I? It's not funny when someone gets a tooth knocked out. But this reminds me of an idiot boss I once had. We cookie cutter approaches to things. You can't have cookie cutter approaches. I had someone working for me who didn't have great command of the English language. And it's a 50-year story, 40-year story, but it's really worth telling. And actually, he wasn't that bad of a writer, but I was in charge of letter writing and customer relations for a region of my brokerage house. So when I first out of school, got a communications job for which I was very grateful. And one of my employees was wrong in that, I forget the nature of it, but the customer was harmed. And every once in a while, when you write letters every day, you get in the habit of using stock answers. And he said, we apologize for the inconvenience. Well, the nature of the problem really wasn't an inconvenience. We just should have apologized, period. So what do you think my boss did? Because remember, people in middle management are subject to their bosses, and it's their perception, not always reality, of how their bosses will react, that they behave. And my boss obviously didn't trust the powers that be because he banned the use of the word inconvenience. How dumb was that? Bob, I'm not going to give you a last name. It's 50 years later. I don't even know if you're alive 40 years later. But boy, did that form my opinion of, and he was a pretty decent manager actually overall, but what a dumb thing to do. To take a customer service letter writer and ban in the entire department, not just I had the southwest region of the country, not just my region, sir, but the whole place. You can't use inconvenience because one guy misused it. Oh, I'm sorry. These things get me nuts. Oh, there's a lot of good regional stuff today. You're going to enjoy this. It is 6:44. Don't worry, we're going to open up the phones a little while, and you can join in my distaste. Boy, AOC is getting herself in trouble with her own party. Talk about biting the hand that feeds you. Since she's the darling of the socialist set, says a story in the Post, and that is paying off in big campaign donations for Representative Andrea Ocasio-Cortez. Now, the way it works is when she ran, or when you run and you raise lots of money, you have to put some in the kitty for all other congressional races. But evidently, she's so anti-moderate that she's not quite doing that. And here's a quote she tweeted: "I give quite a bit to fellow Dems. We fundraised over $300,000 for others more than my dues, with over 50% going to swing seats. The DCCC made clear that they will blacklist any org that helps progressive candidates like me. I can choose not to fund that kind of exclusion." So what she's in effect doing, kind of like Tea Party-ish, if we look at the parallels in the other party from several years ago, this again is one of the extremists, and I guess extremists need to be heard because this is free speech, okay? But hopefully the moderate Democrats will figure out how to marginalize her. We can only hope for the good of the country, and that's on both sides. We went after the Tea Party, and now we're going after the, I don't know, the Mud Party. I really don't know. Now, listen to this. This didn't affect us here in New York, but it is a classic example of something we rarely hear about all the time. And that's how our politicians are compelled by unions and or other organizations so that they can get elected to do things that you will pay with in perpetuity. Now, this is out of New Jersey, but it could be New York or anywhere else. And the story was called a $677 hour for acupuncture. That's right. In case you missed it, New Jersey just made national news for its astronomically wasteful health spending on teachers. Inspiring stuff, right? Well, it really is. Consider this mind-blowing loophole explored in detail by Marshall Allen of ProPublica. The teacher's health plan doesn't cap out-of-network benefits. Now, here's what that means. And I took a picture over the weekend I got to share with you. That's why I got to start getting this stuff on the website. But let's say, and now I'm going to offend some of you, but it doesn't make me perfectly right. You're allowed to disagree. You're allowed to be annoyed. And I say so with, what's the thing, love and peace. But let's say that you're a school teacher and you believe that it's crystals that will cure you of your sciatica. And so you go to a aromatherapist who also is a, who also, preaches Wicca or something. I am a shaman. That's another one. Well, they got to pay for it. In this case, $677 an hour for acupuncture. It's out of program. Well, what happened was, when they were being challenged, back when they were getting their new deal, because they had so much power, they made, and give Chris Christie his due, Chris Christie tried to overturn this thing, but the union was so powerful. They did it. So some practitioners are getting reimbursed for such staggering number of patients under the plan that the Attorney General's office is looking into it, because these people may not be licensed. It's just costing people a lot of money. Yet again, it seems like we have an ambulance every morning here by the train station. We can share with you why. We probably should, but we'll do that in a moment. I just don't want to break order here. While we're in New Jersey, this is another one of those things where now the Supreme Court is, and I'm glad they're involved, but boy, oh boy, if they don't get this one right, they're telling us something that I feared all along, is that the politics of lying is now codified and okay. Listen to this. After a 7-week trial, 2 convictions, and more than 3 years of appeals, it now comes down to 1 hour. This is about Bridgegate. That's how much time will be allowed by government prosecutors and attorneys for 2 former aides to Governor Christie. It is a showdown more than 6 years in the making. Now, you do remember, it's a simple story, really. The mayor of Fort Lee was originally, he was a Democrat, but it was when Christie was riding high, and they wanted him to support and endorse the governor. Well, for whatever reason, he decided not to. So this one woman said, well, it's time to have some traffic problems in Fort Lee. They have the email. And so she gets a hold of this other guy and yet a third party and says, let's shut it down. Let's, those are my words now. But in effect, let's make this happen. So for 4 days, people were not able to get across the GWB in any reasonable time. The people in the city of Fort Lee were all tied up, couldn't get anywhere. There was gridlock within the city itself for 4 days. People were late for work. People were annoyed. People couldn't get to the doctors. People couldn't keep their appointments. God only knows if anybody died on their way to the hospital. Well, so one of the 3 turned states, and she and Bridget Ann Kelly, and another former Christie deputy chief, she was the deputy chief of staff, and Bill Marrone, the one-time deputy executive director of the Port Authority, were charged and convicted of wire fraud and conspiracy. There's been much speculation about what the court might do, especially after the Supreme Court shocked many by taking the case at all. Marrone had already reported to prison, and Kelly was packing to leave when the court in June unexpectedly agreed to hear the case. Now, it's good for them to hear the case. But here's what their case is based on. Okay. Supreme Court, I don't pray, but I am praying now. Please do the right thing if the law allows. But what they're saying is that this is politics. And so here go, it's okay. So folks, we will be giving the political operatives on both sides, depending on what the Supreme Court does, license to F up and screw up our lives in the name of politics. These people have to break rocks. They have to go to jail. Now, I just want you to think, and I said this at the time 4 years ago, and I'm going to say it again. Your mom is dying. Your wife or husband is dying. Your child is in Sloan Kettering with cancer and in agony and wants to see mom, and you can't get across the bridge because Krispy Kreme wanted to do, and again he got scot-free. He got off in the old Beckett line, you know, and will no one rid me of this meddlesome priest? He managed to insulate himself from it, although it cost him the presidency, or at least the nomination of same. But we cannot let this pass. And if the Supreme Court lets them off the hook, the people of New Jersey, they won't do it. They'll go on with their lives. This has been going on for decades, where we let the police, the fire, the unions, the politicians, the toll takers take your money and run. Well, now this isn't just your money that they're taking. They're screwing up your lives deliberately, and they're asking the Supreme Court to say, well, that's politics. It's a different magisterium. It's a different set of rules. I can't even believe this is going to the Supreme Court. But then again, I guess, you know, I trust the Supreme Court, unlike others. I really do. I think they'll look at the law. Anyway, both sides will get 30 minutes to make their arguments before the court. And, wow. But that's essentially what they're saying. It's politics. So it's okay to mess up your life, and we're just pawns in their game. Well, we should all follow this case carefully. And if the people in New Jersey don't rise up and do something about it, well, they deserve what they get. Now, another story, as we head a little bit towards the national news. I know everybody gets annoyed. I'm tired of talking about Trump, too. But we have an interesting problem here. And this was an editorial in one of the papers over the weekend, but it made sense. By now, you have to concede that Donald Trump was right when he said he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. This is by a man by the name of Tom Marrone. So what is Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell worried about? Why is he fighting so hard to block witnesses like Bolton from testifying during the impeachment trial? Because what he will do is, even I got a relative who keeps hitting me with this, there's no direct proof. There's no one who actually talked to the president has testified about about the deal with the Ukraine, and that's true. But Bolton wants to, so let him do it. I don't believe he should. How many times do I have to say, don't remove him from office? But people want to be able to make this denial because the guy didn't open his mouth, like some kid who cites some obscure law and saying, yeah, I stole the money, but nobody saw me do it, you know. Look, let the guy testify, because politics in America is a game of inches. If only 5% of Trump voters defect in November, he's toast. He can keep the other 95%. Maybe there's a small percentage that can still move. That's why the Democrats want to do it, and that's why the Republicans don't want to do it, that little tiny gap of votes. And that's why they're both playing these games. But you know what? We really need to let the system play out. People, when they're going to vote, they're going to vote. But both sides, if he's supposed to testify, he should testify. And if the Senate wants to acquit, they should acquit. This isn't that complicated. Now, for why I'm seeing fire trucks and ambulances here at the train station. Generally, here's what happens. When it's cold, people can loiter around the train station. Now, if they keep moving, no problem. But if they're inside and the police ask them to leave, well, then what they do is they say they're sick. And if they say they're sick, well, then they call an ambulance. So in the cold weather, we've had a couple of incidents so far, and I see them right out my window because we are the radio station at the train station. And by the way, I wanted to share some numbers with you. And yesterday, we saw that the temperature did get up to 69. Just incredible weather. Now, another story that's making news, and we're trying to get our arms around it. The people in Tehran, the familiar death to America chants in Iran turned into anti-government death to liars course during spontaneous protests. Thousands of students took to the streets of the capital in what began as a vigil for the 16 students killed when Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard mistakenly shot down an airliner. And so what we're seeing now is some pushback towards the government. But when you look at these, okay, and this is a debate I've been having with many people. This may well be a good thing. I don't know if we'll actually see regime change, and if President Trump believes that his actions are doing this, well, good for him and good for the result. But like many people, after 1979 and the attack on our embassy, I didn't have warm feelings about Iran for many, many, many years. And once said, and I look back on it with embarrassment, I was talking with K.T. McFarland, the former deputy defense secretary, and said, I could see me running through Tehran with an M16. But the more research I did and the more years that passed and the more books I read and the more I got involved in international politics, I got to realize, as I told someone yesterday, that the people in Iran, who are very proud Persians, are not the same as the theocracy that runs them. And that Tehran, unlike Saudi Arabia, which is like a fake top-down theocracy society, unlike Iraq, where people were oppressed in horrible ways, unlike Syria, which can't find its butt with either hand, or Lebanon, which can, but has a very, very delicate three-religion, and maybe more now, sectarian place, or Afghanistan, which is just a total mess, or Pakistan, which hides terrorists. The people in Tehran are not the same. They actually have a functioning government. And even this picture here showing the people protesting, there's actually women protesting. Do you think you'd see that in Saudi Arabia or Egypt or any one of these other countries? See, Tehran, my beef with Tehran now is what they did in 79 and their insistence that Israel shouldn't exist. You take those two things away, I don't have beef with those people. They have a real country. Women can vote. Women can drive cars. They have businesses. They have an economy. Why do you think that sanctions can be used to hurt them? It's kind of like what we in the middle class realize. They'll write a lot of tickets in our neighborhoods, boy. They will take the money out of us through Easy Pass every which way because we have the money. You can put sanctions on us. This is a middle class country. And it would do well if the president is successful in arranging some kind of regime change, to get a rapprochement between them and which is my biggest stickler, them and the Israelis, because not for nothing, in the push for hegemony in that region, which is dominance, it's the Sunnis have given us much more headache. They brought you 9/11. They are bringing you the war, and I forget what in a little country. I just have a little brain fart here, but you know what I'm talking about. They have put their madrasas all over the Middle East. They brought you ISIS. They brought you Al-Qaeda. So I'm not saying we're ready to forgive and forget what they did in Iran, but we need to start looking at reality and not just deal with this stuff emotionally. And what's cool about this is you see women screaming, women protesting. Good for you. Now, I don't know if they're going to push back on their theocracy, but at least the fact that they're complaining is a good thing. And if that's and if that's what Donald Trump, and even he says he wasn't pushing for regime change, but if regime change happens, good for him. Give him his due. Yes, another bank. I got another couple of stories. It's 7 o'clock. I know I have to reset. Do you really give a hoot? I'm just wondering. Do you give a hoot about, I care about people going their own way, but what's going on in the UK with the royal family? If these people want to come back to North America, and in this case, she's from Canada, and have their own lives rather than have it be dictated by the monarchy, good for them. But that's about all I have to say about that. But the monarchy is a big deal there, and it does serve some purposes because it's apolitical. But we have a flag for that here. Bloomy continues. Bloomberg, ex-Mayor Mike Bloomberg continues. My God. Ads everywhere. You can't go everywhere without seeing an ad. And I'm already on record. If he offers me a job, I'll take a hiatus from the radio. I'd work to get him elected. I really would. But I don't think he's going to do that. Michael Goodwin finally has a headline in the Post today that peace through strength. That's not a bad idea, Michael. See, finally, even an ass kisser like Michael Goodwin, who got his job at the Post, obviously, because he's lined up, and this is my view, not my opinion, because he's so lined up with the anti-Obama, pro-Trump, right or not. Every once in a while, even that broken clock that was once a good newsman, Michael Goodwin, gets something right. So, yeah, I agree. You should give the president a compliment right now. Although the president has a couple of issues he has to deal with, and I'll get to that now. Just to be honest, just so you know, I'm not just totally praising some of the things the president has done. It looks like he lied to us again. That's a shocker, right? There's air up there. It's still dark out. This out of the New York Times. The Times. Well, I've been quoting the Post all morning. Now you can handle the Times. They had to kill him because he was planning an imminent attack, but how imminent they could not say. Where they could not say. When they could not say. They could not say that they could not say. And really it was more about what he had already done, or actually it was to stop him from hitting an American embassy or 4 embassies or not. Here's the bottom line. Did you notice when we went to war with Iraq, of course, we had the situation where, in both wars, but in the second case, we had the situation where the Secretary of State, Colin Powell, went to the UN and said, see, weapons of mass destruction. However, when they talked about war, you heard from the generals and you heard from the SecDef, the Secretary of Defense. But in this case, he had old Bubble Butt, the fawning, integrityless twerp, the Secretary of State, be with him because he does whatever the president wants. I mean, look, he should. That's his job. But they didn't even keep the Secretary of Defense in the loop. And thus, he says, and I quote, we saw no evidence Iran targeted 4 embassies, as the story shifts again. Here's my point. If the president felt that was what was necessary to keep us safe, and he felt it was necessary strategically to do what he did, well, good for the president. But just don't, even when you have a success, you got to lie to us. Keep SB in the row. Well, he threatened, no, they attacked the embassy. That's what they did. But meanwhile, what he doesn't write, and what you don't see, because the news cycles, and I blame all of the mainstream press for this, they move on to the next thing and they forget. But you could look back, go on the web and look back and read about the construction of that embassy. It is a citadel. Now, I don't blame the president for being annoyed that they tried to storm it, and however they did, even if they never got past the first fence. No one's going to take the embassy in Iraq ever again. It's one of the greatest forts we have. I think it's like a school campus now. It's huge. Lots of security and good for us. But because most people don't dedicate the time that we who do this kind of work, we know that embassy is almost impregnable. But most people don't. So they're thinking it's another Benghazi or another 1979. Not quite the same thing. Anyway, Mr. President, you don't need to lie when you have a win. And I am following this story that maybe you might have even pushed towards, if not regime change. You've shaken the regime in Tehran. Good for you. And I'm beginning to hate politics, by the way. I mean, I love the whole notion of it, but I'm getting to hate it because both sides do what suits them. You can't get the Democrats to say the president did a good thing, but they just want to say, he lied. No, well, he did both. Similarly, if I have to hear one more time, as I did this weekend about 1979, I'm going to puke. Please, don't hit me with that anymore. I was the worst until I did a lot more research about it. The worst. And I've had to fight the urge. You think I like when people get in the streets, and I know that they may well be ignorant a-holes? Death to America, please. But now at least they're saying death to their own people, so that's not a bad thing. It took me 30 years to get over it, but at least I got over it. Only because the people, the young people, in the Middle East, Iran is a mecca. Poor choice of words, is a mecca compared to the rest of those backward heads 700 years in the past. 700 years in the past, kneeling down to their God 75 times a day to be told what to do. All right, I'm done. All right, let's get to the reset. It is 7:06. Welcome to Radio Westchester. That was fun. Oh, God, doing honest radio is going to kill me. But it'll be a good way to go. You're listening to Radio Westchester. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. It's 31 degrees, on its way to 47. We do have to share the weather with you again. And reset for the top of the hour. Share the headlines. Then we'll get to Vince Russo. And then I got to make a couple of calls to move things around because we have a very interesting week this week. It is 31. Broken clouds on its way to 47. The forecast mainly cloudy today, much cooler than over the weekend, but still above average with highs around 43. Tonight, mostly cloudy with lows around 35. The normal average low will be 18. So Tuesday, morning breaks of sun. That's right, morning breaks of sun tomorrow, then scattered rain showers developing during the afternoon, highs around 45. The wind will be out of the east 5 to 10 miles an hour. Wednesday, a mix of sun and clouds. The high will be 52. The overnight low will be 36. Thursday, morning rain, then partly cloudy, high of 45. The overnight low, chilly, 25. Friday, mostly sunny. The high will be 30 degrees. At least we know that there will be. It'll be cold again. In fact, we're going to go to Saturday this time. We didn't do it in the last 2 or 3 weather reports. Taking some water. They say drink a lot when you have a cold or whatever. So I'm drinking a lot. Vodka. No, it's not vodka. All right. Saturday, now catch this, tracking a potential winter storm. It is still too early to exact details on any snow totals, but there is the chance for accumulating snow eventually changing to rain. Highs around 40 degrees. Saturday night, rain ends, clouds clear late, lows around 29 degrees, icy conditions with refreezing possible, but at least we won't be commuting, so you know what you do? You just stay home. You put a game on, a movie on, you're tender with your wife, your husband, your whomever, the dog, you cuddle, take them for the walk, and you just enjoy the day. Sunday, windy with a mix of sun and clouds. The high will be 28. The weather was brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And as we head into the bottom of the hour, let's take a look at our local headlines and tell you who supports the bottom of the hour. Of course, our friends at the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn. Plug in virtual reality at 8 o'clock. We're going to have some fun. Dominic's Fine Cigars will bring you Jake's football pick results of the week. Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Patrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located on Boston Post Road, right here in Larchmont. Some of the headlines we're following for you, and we will be talking to some of the people who are following or making the news today. A 14-year-old here in New Rochelle is facing sexual assault charges in an alleged incident at the high school. We don't know who is accused or who the victim is. The school is not yet releasing that information, but they are taking it, they say, very seriously. Investigators offer a reward in Yorktown, hate crime vandalism, $2,500 if you give them a tip at who's been vandalizing places of worship of all religions, by the way. And the phone number is 1-866-313-TIPS. That's 866-313-TIPS. Oops, I forgot that this is here. It's a new mic. I almost ate the microphone. Da-da-da-da-da. Okay, the daughter of the Muncie stabbing victim started a GoFundMe page to help her father. So far, they've raised $13,000. He's the man who was clipped with a machete. He has brain damage. He's still in a coma. They're trying to raise $250,000. So far, $13,000. They say the bills are already piling up. So if you can help, okay. His name is Nikki Cohen. Her name is Nikki Cohen, the daughter of the stabbing victim. And he is, of course, Joseph Newman, Neumann. A Yorktown man is accused of driving without a license, but they said he didn't have a license. He was pulled over for having an expired state inspection sticker, but then they found out that he was driving with a revoked license and without an ignition interlock device. That's usually used for DWIs. And officials have found a body in the woods at Harriman State Park. Officials say the father and kids who were out on their ATVs found it, and they found an ATV off-road vehicle with it. So police are investigating that. And lastly, we're going to be talking with George Latimer about this in a little bit. But according to a story by Mark Lungriello, and we have a couple of stories to follow up with him with this week. Mark Lungriello, that records show that the county had discussed ending the Playland deal even before the dispute emerged in the press. So we will find out a little bit about that. Now we're going to open up the telephones, but where is this thing? I did take something with me today, and I just have to find it. Did I throw away the football score sheet? It was a really nice little talk about. Oh yes, here it is. I like this, and I'll share with you my story, and if you want to share with me with yours, just a little something getting away from all the harsh politics. What is something you remember from childhood and realize as an adult was something totally different than you thought it was at the time? What is something you remember from childhood and realize as an adult was something totally different than you thought it was at the time? Well, for me, it's always been, I really believed that if I kissed candy up to God, that I could eat it. And it's amazing. I could drop, what did you call them? A Mary Jane, those good candies, the penny candies. I could drop those in the mud, and if wash it off or whatever, wipe it off of my shirt, kiss it up to God, I felt it was good. Or I could drop a wingding, which I liked. But my favorite cupcakes of the day didn't have icing. I like Devil Dogs, and I like Yankee Doodles. They got a little hole with the cream, which, by the way, brings up something else. But anyway, that's what I thought when I was young. Do you have anything like that? Is there anything? We're going to ask Vince when he calls in just a few minutes. Now, let's look at our lineup today. Vince Russo joins us at 7:20, George Latimer at 7:35. And then at 8:20, we're going to have a lot of fun with Jake's Picks. Now, we've been reaching out to Hezi Harris. He couldn't be with us last week. We're trying to get him on the phone, and we're going to try after the news in just a few moments and before Vince calls in. But 914-222-3141, 914-222-3141. My cold is rearing its head, so I got to give you some music. Such a beautiful piece of music, and if you weren't around in the 6 o'clock hour, that is Canon in D, a classic piece of piano music that you've heard at weddings and things like that. It's a sweet piece of music. I think it became famous in the movie Ordinary People. I can't remember now. Much like Bolero became famous, and everybody went out and bought it after the movie, the motion picture 10. What is something you remember from childhood to realize as an adult was something totally different than you thought it was at the time? So we have so many things to talk about. I don't know what we're going to do about this law that the governor ignored. The legislature is going to have to get busy. We are going to reach out to Andrea Stewart-Cousins. Now, this week, We have, because of some radio business that we absolutely need to get to. We're not going to tell you exactly what's going to be pre-recorded and what we're going to do, but we're live today. We're live Wednesday, and we got to rejigger our lineup a little bit. But the rest of the days of the week will be. I mean, we're going to be here, and you're going to hear a good show. But I might not be here to take calls. We'll leave it at that, because like any other business, we need to tend to the business of broadcasting so that we can get rolling. Now, speaking of getting rolling, we're ready with podhockey.com. We're ready with our Holocaust show, and we are starting Wednesday at 10 o'clock, Time to Talk with Jen Graziano premiere. So we're looking forward to that, and already we've been posting our shows for Aging Issues Radio with Joe Choricelli. He did 2 more. He's done about 4 or 5 shows with us, and we have many others that will be joining the lineup. Another show that we started to work on is one, believe it or not, about the mafia. About those of you who like your mob stuff, we're going to have a show about the mob and what's going on there and how much power they still have here. So all that stuff coming your way. We heard from a professor over the weekend, yet another professor who does a podcast already, and they do it on the law, and they wish to join our lineup. So it's all we'll say right now. We have Choice who will be joining us soon. Also, we'll be doing stuff about, speaking of the law, with Jeff Deskovic and the Jeff Deskovic Foundation for Exonerees. It is 7:18. Vince usually joins us by now. I guess maybe we should have waited till later in the 8 o'clock hour to do this, but the whole notion of something you remember from childhood and realize that as an adult was totally different. So many different things, whether it's the nature of marriage, family, what a job is like. I remember as a kid, and this was really naive of me, I would read that they need money for cancer. And, when you're a kid, you don't have to pay bills. You don't realize that it costs money to hire the people to do it. So I'd say to my Mom, so what do? They take all the money in the pot and they stir it and it becomes a cure. And she'd say, no, son, you've got to go out and work. And the people that will find a cure for cancer, it takes years and years. So they need to hire doctors and business people and fundraisers, and the government needs to get money, and the money gets money through the taxes. That's before you grow up and realize what makes the world work. Now, based on some of my complaints, you may think that I'm anti-tax. Of course not. You need to tax people. You want services, you want police, you want fire, you want health care to the extent that it's done by the government for aging people, et cetera, or people of lesser means. Well, it costs money. The only problem I have, that because of the nature of our politics, and not that there's a better way, because I don't know one yet, the nature of our politics, it breeds legal corruption, where unions hold up our elected officials for egregiously over-generous packages that you will pay for the rest of your life. That I take umbrage with. There he is. I didn't hear him ring. Did I not set? I did not set the thing. He'll call back because he's a pain in the butt. But let's see if we can't get him. Yeah, he'll pick up. He'll remember the number. Yeah, there he is. All righty, it's that time every day. We talk to this man, except on Tuesday, and we have a lot to talk about with him. Please welcome Vince Russo. Good morning, Vince.
Good morning, Robert.
It is always a pleasure. Did you hear my I had a lot of diatribes today. I poured out my liver and my kidneys regarding Iran. But did you hear this little riff we put out? What is something you remember from childhood and realize as an adult was something totally different than you thought it was at the time?
I've been trying to think of something. One of the things that came to mind was I always thought Eisenhower was president forever.
Forever?
Yeah.
Okay.
I always thought he was the president, and that was it. He was never going to go away.
Well, it certainly. Well, you weren't alive during FDR, but he almost was president forever. And we have a mayor up here wants to be mayor forever over in. Well, one is going to be the guy in White Plains. I don't think they have term limits. He's going to be mayor until he gets old and grayer than me. Which is why.
Well,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
in our municipality, our former mayor, who's on the town council now, he was mayor here for 43 years. And I think 43 years. I think he may be the highest in terms of years, the longest serving municipal official in New Jersey.
Okay.
43 years.
Wow. You know what? That's like in some municipalities, you don't have to be a lawyer to be a judge. Did you know that?
You don't have to be a lawyer to be on the Supreme Court.
Well, that I knew. And certainly, though, as one of 9, you have a lot of leavening there, if you are a person of great mind and you have clerks. But we're talking about someone in Podunk who's sitting, you go before me, get accused of something, and the guy has an IQ of a fig. That's dangerous.
Well, maybe I should apply for that job. I like that idea.
See, but I'm not up to the fig part yet. Go ahead.
Could you ask George Latimer a question for me?
Sure.
Could you ask George if the county is going to permit the gun show to be held in the Westchester County? What do they call it?
I already know the
Convention
answer
Center
to that.
or whatever.
I'm sure that's a no.
I know, and ask him why. I mean, it's.
Oh, he'll tell you he's not shy, and I know you like George, but no, he's not shy. Oh, he'll tell you why.
I do like George.
He'll tell you why. Plus, he needs to get elected, but he'll tell you why.
Because there for years there was a really good show there, and never bothered anybody, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, the sky's falling down. And that was all throughout all of New York. There were shows in Albany, Poughkeepsie, Newburgh, Yonkers, Westchester, and all gone.
Okay, I will ask him. I'm sure he's probably already listening already. He tends to listen before he comes on, so now he's got somebody to hate. And I'll give him your phone number and your address. But but another thing, I'll remind him that you're well armed. I'm going.
That's all right. I still, regardless of his answer, I still like George.
No, I know that. A lot of people don't agree with some of his stuff, but like him. He is the poster child for the retail politician. I mean, someone sitting right now in Yonkers in their kitchen listening to this, if you call up George and ask him to go to coffee, he'll meet you. He's the. I don't know. He doesn't sleep. And
here in New Jersey, we don't have county executives. We have what they call the Board of Chosen Freeholders.
Yeah, what is a freeholder?
Freeholder was a landowner in the colonial times. So, of course, the landowners were the ones who ran everything, and they had a governing body that was called the Chosen Freeholders. They were chosen by the other landowners. They weren't elected originally, and they are the county executives. It's not a one person who does it. It's run by the freeholders.
Okay, well, like for example, Freehold, New Jersey. Well, I go to work out there sometimes. There's a rink down there. My grandson and I go to. But why do they call it Freehold?
Oh, that I have no idea.
Oh, wait a minute. You're a public official, an elected official in New Jersey. By the way, did you see the piece in the paper about in your state? Did you hear I did a Jersey story today.
I didn't hear it.
Do you know your teachers negotiated? They have so much power that they negotiated a contract where they could use any out-of-network service they want. So they have, you can go for crystal therapy and stuff like that for hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, the NJEA is incredibly powerful.
You ain't shooting, man.
And, that is one of the reasons why 71% of our tax money goes to funding the Board of Education.
Yeah, no kidding. Would you like to get in trouble with me? Because I'm going to insult a lot of people I like and a lot of people who like me, but I have to do this. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, I stopped by a bookstore over the weekend while I was nursing this cold. It didn't help. But I just figured, I'll go to the bookstore, I'll feel better. That's because I'm an idiot. But anyway, I love books. So I go there. Okay. And they have all these various sections.
Yeah.
Well, here's a section that they have. Now, I'm not saying it's only women, But the next time, men, as you are, like next weekend, when you're looking at the conference final, it's beer and football. You know that this section is mostly for women. Are you ready? I took a picture of it. All 6 books lined up. Are you ready?
All 6 books.
Yeah. Reiki. The guide for Reiki. You know what that is, right? It's like one of
I
those.
have no idea.
Well, good, because it's like one of these hocus pocus. The shamans of old could cure you of your miserable and the diseasedness. The next one is the Crystal Handbook. Another one is Tarot Card Reading, Your Personal Guide. Another one is Essential Oils and Aromatherapy. And here's the next one, Chakra Healing. Your personal, hey, I got your chakra right here. Sorry. How come you're not laughing? Don't send me down the tubes, what?
I don't even know what that means, but okay.
No, but it's like you have a chakra, like an essence, Hey, look, we're from the '60s. We had a lot of this garbage too. Let's not act like we were innocent. I mean, guys like you were listening to the Beatle records backwards and thought Christ was on the record. Chill. But
guys like you? What is that?
I don't know. I just Oh, look! If you play it backwards, Paul is dead, and Ringo has an undescended testicle. And there's another one. Now, this one is actually the real deal. Meditation, your personal guide. See, I had on Christopher Hitchens several years ago, as you know, before he passed away. And I've been listening to a lot of his tapes because, he's, and I know you found the Lord. He's not talking about the way you found the Lord, which is in good works. But, he's never lost a debate with a cleric. He never has. Can't possibly. I was listening to one the other day where, and it's the classic one that I always rail about, where, well, okay, you keep praying, and God cured your kid. That was my prayers. He said, what about the other 10,000, the other 9 million who died, whose parents were praying for them? I'm just saying, it's an interesting thing. All right, let's move on. I've got all kinds of stuff. Did you watch any of the football games?
I watched those football games. Boy, oh boy, there was some really good games. I really enjoyed it. I was glad to see that the Green Bay Packers won. My wife's a big Packers fan.
Your wife's a Packers fan?
Yep.
She
likes
did she fall off
too,
a bike or something? How do you become a Packers fan?
I have no idea.
Does she like a lot of cheese?
Well, look, the same way I became a Montreal fan or a Dallas Cowboys fan. You like the team.
You're a Dallas fan? I mean, I know you're a Dallas. How did that happen?
Well, because,
Did your parents lock you in a closet or something? What?
No. I always said it that I was never a hometown fan just because they were the hometown.
No,
and I would look at a team and say, which team plays this game the way I like it to be played? And it was Dallas because they threw the ball all the time. They had always great quarterbacks.
I'm being disingenuous. I actually like the Packers, too. I'm just trying to bust your chops.
But, so that's the way I picked Dallas. I just love the passing game that they had. I couldn't stand, and still to this day can't stand, watching teams like the Chicago Bears and the Lions.
Now, do you have Dallas stickers next to you? Don't tread on me on your pickup truck.
No.
Hey,
I do not have.
I saw a little bit of the Chiefs game on my phone because I was sick all day yesterday. 59 degrees. They got 59. They got 51 points. But they're not going to win in the finals if they give up 31 either.
No, it's true. Do you remember back in the day that bookies we knew wouldn't take bets on the Chiefs?
Yeah, I talk about that all the time. They used to say, remember Hank Stram, the chief coach? Always had the lineup fold up. The gamblers that I hung around with, he used to say, and I never gambled, as you know, he's got the sports side there, that crook. Yeah, you couldn't get a line on the Chiefs. The fix was
No, you couldn't. Yeah, they always felt that those games weren't honest. I don't know why. I don't think there was any basis for it.
No, to quote my Jewish friends, it wasn't kosher.
No.
And you know what? I have to admit, I had absolutely no interest in the 49ers Viking games. As far as they could have been washed away in the tsunami, and I wouldn't have cared.
I like the Niners. I'd like to see the Niners.
Oh, you know
actually
why
did the
though? That
football.
you're transparent. That's because you're a Giants fan, and they probably pass one another. That's like two dogs sniffing one another's butts. 49ers. What do you care about the What do you care about the 49ers for? Oh, they play in
No, but
San
I
Francisco.
always liked the 49ers again because they had great quarterbacks. Joe Montana, Steve Young. Oh, they were just delightful to watch.
You like those men? I'm just
Yeah.
saying. Yeah, okay. People to each his own. Times have changed. Okay, but the Ravens, they were the talk of the town. Lamar Jackson, they never lose. Fort never lose. Boom. They get beat by the Titans. And then I got to listen to Jake when he comes in at 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, because this is the one thing that he was on about. The Titans, the Titans, the Titans, the Titans. So now I got to listen to this when he comes in. But he won.
Yeah, that was a really good game. The Packers almost blew it. I mean, they had a really good lead, and then the Seahawks got 3 possessions and 3 touchdowns. So they just ran out of time. Otherwise, it could have been different.
I guess the Ravens. What did I want to ask you about? Was Mary screaming and yelling at the TV during the Packers game?
Nah, not really screaming and yelling, but she was delighted that they did win. She's looking forward to them going deeper into the playoffs, as they say. Hey, you see the Devils fired Ray Shero.
Yeah, I did that story today. But the funny thing is, they fired him after the team won 3 of the last 4. That's a strange franchise since they let my boy go, who's now running the Isles. Too old, ageism. Yeah, they let him, but actually they were right to let him go. He didn't want to rebuild. He picked up too many veterans, even though there were veterans I liked, and Simmons and PK. And did you hear though what the Devils fans did to Tony? Oh God, I can't think. The guy on the Rangers that got 3 goals the other night.
No.
I can't think. My brain is shot. At any rate, he's Italian from South Jersey, and they were calling him Guido. No, but here's the problem. And then this is to be fair. Now, he handled it well. He said, we won, you didn't. Because Kyle Palmieri plays for them.
Yeah, I know.
What's wrong with the... But, it's so typical of sports. They called him a Guido. But, could you imagine if it was a Latino or an Asian or a black? I'm not... See, now you laughed. Okay.
Yeah, right.
But you can't do that in this day and age. That hurts the Devils, boy. Let me tell you. Well, like an idiot, he answered them. I don't know what he said, but because he's a little bit. One of the reasons he's a great hockey player and he's going to be even terrific. But the reason he got, even though he was drafted like number 5, he got passed around is he may well be. I don't know. No, in other words, I don't know. I say that tongue in cheek. He was difficult to get to be a good teammate, but you know what? It really is offensive, and they shouldn't do that. And we need to defend. I mean, as someone who does humor, I don't really care because I find it funny. But we have to respect all ethnicities, and we can't be calling the guy Guido.
Yeah, I mean, what if he was Jewish, or if he was, other.
Maybe we should take more offense at that stuff. I don't know. I don't, but I on his behalf, I take offense. It's quite the hockey player. Have you watched Panarin yet? Hello.
I'm sorry. Have
you
I
watched
what?
Panarin, or do you think the bread man, the guy on the Rangers? You owe it to yourself.
No, I have hardly ever watched the Rangers.
You need to watch this guy. He's maybe one of the top 5 at handling the puck I've ever seen. Great stuff.
Yeah, if I watch the Ranger games, I'll have to watch Chris Kreider, and I don't want to do that.
Well, there's talk he may get traded. I pray to God himself.
Not to Montreal.
No,
if
yes.
he gets traded to Montreal, I will just go crazy.
I can't. See, I will put you on the news at 6 o'clock.
Oh, my word. That'll be nice.
Oh, please, God. It's like when I used to pray, just because of arguments with conservatives back when Trump was, this goes all the way back when Clinton was president. I used to say, boy, you remember I used to say this, I hope Hillary Clinton gets elected just to drive them nuts. Well, I hope Kreider gets traded to them just to drive them crazy. All right, listen, I got to get the aforementioned county executive on. So I will send you away. Oh, by the way, how are the Canadians doing? Hello?
They're doing lousy. They just snapped an 8-game losing streak. Kovalchuk scored and they won. I don't know if it was in overtime or whatever, but they're awful.
Well, okay,
They're
just
terrible.
glad to hear you admit it. All right, take care, Vince Russo, everybody. We are going to go to George Latimer in just a couple of minutes. He's generally very reliable on the time. It is 7:36. We're going to take another look at the weather here on Radio Westchester. And why, oh, why do I not have music for it? Here we go. I hit the button. See, I've got to move the pot. I know you don't know what that means, move the pot. I'll explain it to you. I work my own board, as I have most of my years in radio. And these little things, here, take a look. See this? They go up and down. And we actually call them pots. It goes back to the word potentiators. They're actually little faders. So you go up and down, and that's how they work. See, down is low, up is high. I keep going to the wrong fader. Welcome to the program. We'll even, show you how we do radio, because that's what we do differently here. In fact, I had a great radio coach, and every once in a while I violate even some of his rules. We all got to break away from our fathers sometimes, John, but he is the best. Great broadcaster, by the way. We'll talk about him, get him on one of these days about the show that he does in the morning. All righty, the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit UHGC.com. And yes, if you're wondering, does doing the show make you feel better when you're sick? Yeah, it does. I don't know why. It's just when you like what you're doing. Of course, it would help if I had the weather in front of me, wouldn't I? It is 32 as it begins to warm up. 32 on its way to 47 today. Broken clouds as we speak. Mainly cloudy through much of the day, but cooler than it was over the weekend. Tonight, getting down or up, you would say, to 43. Tonight, mostly cloudy, lows 35, normal average low 18. And I said tonight, didn't I? 43 today will be the high. No, that's the average. The average is 43. We'll get up to 47 today, but tonight getting down to 8, down to 35. Tuesday, morning breaks of sun, then scattered rain showers developing during the afternoon. During the afternoon, highs around 45, winds out of the east 5 to 10 miles an hour. Tomorrow night, showers late clearing, lows near 38. Wednesday, a mix of sun and clouds, high will be 52. Thursday, I'm working my way to Saturday, and you'll see why in a moment. Thursday, morning rain, then partly sunny. The high will be 45. The overnight low will be 25 degrees. And he always calls in right on time. We'll be right with you, County Exec. Morning rain on Thursday, then partly sunny. The high will be 45 degrees. The overnight low will be 52. Will be 25. Did I say 52? I read the wrong line. Okay. Mostly sunny on Friday. The high will be 30. But the reason we're getting into Saturday is we're tracking a potential winter storm. It is still too early for exact details and any snow totals, but there is a chance of accumulating snow, eventually changing to rain. Highs around 40. Saturday night, the rain ends. Clouds clear and late. The bottom of the hour is brought to you by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit UHGC.com. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Con. Plug in virtual reality. And when we hit into the 8 o'clock hour and we do our football results, Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente and Padrones. They support that hour. Now, we go next to the county executive, George Latimer. He is here each and every Monday at this time. Good morning, county executive. How are you?
Good morning, Bob. How are you today?
Pretty good. Actually, I'm saying pretty good, but honestly, I have a cold, but you don't need to hear about my complaints. I was talking.
Yeah, I've got one too, and I'm trying to get over it. I've had it for about 6-7 days. I'm hopeful this is near the end.
Yeah, I'm working on mine. Well, not you per se, but you had a couple of stories in the news today that we wanted to get to. There was the piece by Mark Lingriella, which I'm sure you saw, and your communications people dealt with it a little bit. And I know you have an active lawsuit, so say what you can say, but this is the record show Westchester discussed the end of Playland deal before the dispute. What's your reaction to that story, sir?
Well, I think that's half the story. What Mark did the story on was a filing that Standard Amusements put in to get summary judgment, meaning no trial, no case, ended right here, we win, meaning Standard wins. And they filed those papers last week. We have until today to file a response, which we will, And what I would have preferred is that he waited for our response to come in, so you had both sides of the argument. Standard makes an argument. We have a counter argument we think is very strong. That's why we're in court. And I mean, Bob, as a journalist yourself, you have to decide whether you're going to cover both sides of the story at the same time, you're going to do it sequentially, or give precedence to one over the other. And I do think that, the issues of standard amusement have been lost in politics. There is, I had this when I called it the Phil Reisman show. There's this belief that, one party believes in privatization and the other party doesn't, and that's what this is about. That's not what this is about. This, we believe, is about a breach of contract on the part of Standard, and that's why we're in court. Now, the judge will determine it. The court of public opinion will express, their feelings about it after the fact, but for right now, it's in a court of law, and that's where most of it will stay. But I do think if any journalistic entity is going to cover the story, they ought to cover both sides of it. And our side, our response to their issue is coming out now. There's been extensive depositions, and both sides are pretty fixed on their being right. So let's see how it turns out in court.
Now, these are early depositions, correct? At what point do we actually get into the courtroom, do you think?
I think probably end of the month, maybe.
That soon, huh?
Of course, that's. Well, I mean, it's been out there for a while.
Okay.
We issued a termination order in May, and then they went to court shortly after that. They went to bankruptcy court, federal bankruptcy court. It's interesting because under normal circumstances, to sue against a contract, you go to state court. They felt I guess they had a better chance to get what they wanted, which is they want the contract reinstituted, and we don't, and we believe that the breach is irreparable. But in a state court, you would look at the contract to determine what the basis of, the closure of it is. In the bankruptcy court, basically Standard is arguing that they have to go bankrupt because they don't have this contract, and therefore the contract should be reestablished. It's very high-powered lawyers, very clever, intelligent arguments at both sides. But again, underneath it is an emotional argument about politics. And, we believe that, yes, we have a philosophy of government, but in this particular case, we're not going to sue over that. We're going to sue over what we think is legal and what's not. And it's going to be debated until the court decides the situation. And then you'll determine if whoever loses the case in the trial level decides to appeal it. It could very well be the way it plays out. That's the court of law.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to go to the Supreme Court, but, it'll go somewhere.
Okay. Thank you for that. Hey, I got a caller that's actually a fan of yours, but still, he loves, he's a very responsible gun owner. I can say that. He called in early and said, could you ask George Latimer this? And I said, he'll answer any question. And he said, will the gun show go to County Center in Westchester this year? And if not, why not? What's your position?
No, in fact, we passed a law prohibiting it from going there. It was a matter of executive authority. Andy Spano ended the gun show at the county center right after Columbine, and it stayed that way until Rob Astorino came in. Rob has a different philosophy about these things. He allowed it to come back for a number of years. It was suspended 1 year after Sandy Hook, and then was reestablished. And when I came in by executive order, I reversed and went back to the Andy Spano order to eliminate the gun show from coming in. And then subsequently, the Board of Legislators passed a law prohibiting any gun shows on any county-owned property. The bottom line is this. A person has a legal right to own a gun. They have a right to possess long arms and handguns. In this society, I accept the Second Amendment as allowing for that. Some don't, but I do. But there are restrictions that, it had been established that can be made on that right, just as in every, Bill of Rights, free speech, free assembly, free religion. There are some restrictions placed on it. It's a right to have it, but it's not an unlimited, unfettered right. We believe that with county-owned property, and that's all we can control. We can't stop a gun show from going into the Marriott or going into, the Rytown Hilton if they choose to go there. But we can control the county-owned facility, and we said no. For those responsible gun owners who want to see guns displayed, there are other options in the area. There are gun shows that go on in the Meadowlands and I guess Poughkeepsie and some of the other areas, but we chose not to do it here. And, it was the majority population feeling. Certainly not unanimous, but a large section of Westchester County applauded that decision. So it would take now not just a different county executive, but it would actually take a reversal of a law by the Board of Legislators and the county executive to change that policy.
Thank you for that, and I trust our listener has heard that fully. We're with County Executive George Latimer here. He's in every Monday. He is with us from 7:35 right till 8 o'clock. County Executive, you announced that there are free inoculations for the flu through Westchester County. Can you elaborate on that, and how can people get a shot?
They should contact the health department. Obviously, if you have a full-blown case of the flu, we don't want you walking into a room full of people waiting for a flu shot who haven't been immunized. So we want you to call the county health department. You can call the general county office, 995-2000, and ask for the health department. They will set up an immunization time. We have 2 clinics, one in White Plains and one in Yonkers, and then we may be having some mobile dates out in the field as well. Obviously, the flu is out there, and if you get a flu shot, you reduce the likelihood of getting the flu. It is not a guarantee that you won't get the flu, because nothing is 100% perfect, and everybody's physiology is different. But you can get a free flu shot. Call the county health department via the general number, 995-2000, and they'll tell you times and places. And as I said, our 2 clinics, and then if there are any mobile locations, that will be made knowledgeable to you as well. Many to most people get flu shots through their doctors or through their local pharmacists, but a free shot is primarily made available for those people who don't have the resources. There is a cost involved in a flu shot, and if you don't have the money, that should not be the difference between you getting the shot or not getting the shot. But do consult. If you have a doctor that you consult with normally, consult with them before doing anything.
It is 7:48. George Latimer talking about the flu shots, and we had a doctor on the other day who said if you haven't had the flu yet, it's still not too late. Another announcement you made, I found interesting. Corrections partners with legal aid on first of its kind legal service. Tell us about that.
Well, our corrections department, which is our county jail, which is a facility. It's over in Valhalla. It's on the same campus as the Westchester Medical Center, which we no longer own, and some other facilities which we do have out there, fire training center, police academy, and so forth. The county jail is now working with Legal Aid Society to deal with those individuals who have been sent to the county jail awaiting trial. In most cases, they did not make bail, or for some reason, no bail was offered to them. And now we have a whole new set of rules. But to try to work with legal aid in a direct fashion to deal with those individuals in a productive way. This new change in criminal justice reform has gotten a lot of attention. There's a lot of fear now that bad people are going to be out running free. And of course, from a county standpoint, we have to administer the law through our corrections department. So by being involved with legal services and pretrial services, we are trying to deal with folks who have been arrested and accused of a crime, but not yet convicted of a crime. And I know that there's a human tendency to assume that because you were arrested and because you were indicted, you're automatically guilty. Most of those people who feel that way don't know the specifics of any particular case. They may look at a picture of the person who's been accused and say, well, he looks guilty, so that's good enough for me. But our system, which benefits you and me as well as anybody else, is predicated on innocent until proven guilty. So if you're arrested and arraigned, and then at that point in time, depending on the nature of your crime, you may be held without bail or you may be released without cash bail. And the argument that's been made in passing these new changes is so that it's not a function of your wealth, it's a function of whether or not your crime was significant enough and requires you to be incarcerated before your trial, or that you can be out on your own recognizance, and then you have to show back up in court. Because that's really the purpose of bail. It's not to punish you for a crime you've committed. It's to ensure that you show up for the trial. And if a person is a flight risk, then but people don't understand that, Bob. Again, they see a picture of a guy, he looks like a bad dude, and they figure, he's guilty. Why are we letting him go? Well, you haven't convicted him of the crime yet.
Oh,
and
no,
then
no.
just consider this extreme. Go ahead.
I think most people do understand that. I think that the beef that people have, and your comment on this, I was going to ask you about this next anyway, is almost from all walks, conservative, liberal, except for the far left, perhaps. People do feel, though, that judicial discretion, there needs to be some discretion. We did some stories today
Right.
where a guy walked out and he went and robbed another bank. He said he couldn't believe they let him out.
Right.
So everyone's looking
Right.
for that, county executive. Would you agree
I don't
with that?
disagree. I don't disagree. I don't disagree with the changes that may be needed in the law. I'm just commenting that what we're doing, since we don't pass the law, we're the county level of government. We have to administer the law. Our mission here is to try to get the Corrections Department and Pretrial Services to work with these people to make sure that what we get is people who return to court and then stand trial, and not leave. Now, there are people who can make cash bail. They go to a bail bondsman, they have family, whatever, and then they're out on bail, and then they commit a crime. That has happened already. It's not like that's anything new. So the judicial discretion will help, but even when you have judicial discretion already, there's still no guarantee that you're not going to have a bad actor play a game. And I think a lot of this is caught up in the emotion of how people look at a criminal, whether or not the person is guilty or not guilty, and we don't know. So all I can tell you is if state legislature's meeting, there's been discussions about this. I think both of the leaders, or at least Marty Stewart Cousins, said something about revisiting the law and determining if there are changes to be made. Some other prominent people have said the same thing. So,
well, we're going to be getting.
However they change the law, we administer it.
We're going to be reaching out to Andrea Stewart Cousins in the days ahead over that law. Although Hasty did say, as you know, you've been in the assembly among all your many jobs. He said he's not looking to change the law, and that met with some raised eyebrows, to be sure. There was another story.
Well, let me just, Bob, before you go to the other story, let me just add one other point. And
yes,
I think
sir.
It has to be mentioned, whether the listeners connect to this or not. There are many stories of people who were arrested, primarily in New York City, could not make bail, and spent months to years awaiting trial in the hellhole that is Rikers Island. And back home, their family members were like, how come, this person is caught up in Rikers Island? Couldn't make bail. Harvey Weinstein could make bail. The head of Nissan could make bail, got home arrest, and they snuck him out of the country. But, a kid who did something bad potentially, but not deserving of 3 years in Rikers, winds up being in Rikers for a long time. So there is an injustice to correct. The question is, how do you correct it best? And how do you change the law if the law isn't, it maintains a loophole? That hurts people as well. So you've got to try to balance it off.
Absolutely. And there are people who have been, who committed suicide because of it. And I mean, up in Connecticut, it's no less different. I know of some cases that I handled. You remember when I was on radio up county, we used to do a lot of Connecticut stories. There was one guy in jail 2.5 years because he couldn't make bail. And then later he was acquitted. Ridiculous stuff. We're with George Latimer, County Executive. I always like to do stuff involving jobs before I get into money, and you all are accepting applications. I didn't know that the county had seasonal park rangers. How does that work?
Yeah, at Playland. At Playland, we have seasonal park rangers who supplement the sworn officers. Playland on a peak occupancy day could have 8,000, maybe 10,000 people, 12,000 people there. We have a contingent of county police to police it, but we also have park rangers who serve in an assisting capacity. And, that is where many police officers say they got their first teeth cut on law enforcement being a seasonal park ranger. And right now, we are in the hiring mode for everything at Playland. The county will be operating Playland this year, and it's a great summertime job for the right person. There are a variety of jobs, and one of them is park rangers. Could be the right job for them. And as I said, a number of people that I talked to in law enforcement said, "Yeah, my first job I was a park ranger for the summer at Playland."
Why is it people of our age, County Executive, whenever I think of park ranger, I start thinking of Yogi Bear. I don't know why.
That's right.
It's my tiny brain.
You're smarter because you're smarter than the
average bear. 756. The governor had his State of the State speech the other day, and I thought of you and other leaders of municipalities. That $6 billion thing is looming out there like the sword of Damocles. You have to worry that it's going to hit you.
Well, you do worry about it. I mean, he made an allusion in his speech to Medicaid, which is a state-structured program which the counties administer and pay for a piece of, quarter of, roughly speaking. And, he talked about, administration has to be accountable. We have an explosion of Medicaid costs, not because of the way the county administers the program, but because of the benefits of the program and whether or not fraud has been properly investigated, which is not within our authority to do. And I'm afraid that, the state will look at the counties as a way to balance their budget. And what they'll do is unbalance our budget. We constructed, we've been talking about this for a year, we constructed a budget that can lower property taxes, maintain our services. We did it with the, with the sales tax equalization and also 3 or 4 other activities that we did, negotiating some contracts, blah, 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 blah. And now we run the risk of the state dropping whatever. We don't even know how much. X $1 billion worth of costs on us, which will just throw us in tailspin. And, I don't know how we'll respond to that yet. We'll have to see what the numbers are. I'm not going to freak out before time. But, we've talked to, the various administrators of the county departments and said, look, if the state does this to us, we're stuck. The tax levy for 2020 is locked into law. That's not going to change. That tax cut is in place. But what happens to run the government if there's a host of other additional costs thrown on top of us is going to be anybody's guess. And I will be honest with you, I served in the state legislature. In many quarters in Albany, there's not a lot of love for local governments. Certainly if you come out of New York City, you don't understand why we have villages and towns and small cities and counties and multiple school districts. They think it's all a waste of money, have one big school district, one big community. People in Westchester flat out do not want that. And, of course, they will argue that we have a better level of local government than they do in the city because we don't have one big fat bureaucracy that runs everything. But we'll have to see what happens. I'm not feeling good about it, but, I'm not going to anticipate a problem until it manifests itself.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
We'll deal with it.
Anything you want to shout out about? Anything you want to shout out about this
100
morning?
miles an hour. We've completed our food scrap recycling study. We're going to roll it out in the next few weeks. We're going to start our meetings to implement the affordable housing study. We're going to meet with local officials and regions of the county to discuss through what the principles of that study is. And we're gearing up our Census 2020 efforts, of which there'll be more to talk about in the weeks to come.
Okay, County Executive, travel safely. Thank you so much. Once again, we'll talk with you next week. County Executive George
Thank you, Bob.
Latimer,
Have a terrific week.
Thank you, sir, and I hope your cold gets better. It is 8 o'clock on the smacker. Well, actually, we're a couple of seconds away from 8 o'clock. I shouldn't say that before it is. But let's take a look at the top of the hour. First of all, and we have to do the weather. It's 32 degrees. Going to get up to a high of 47 today, but it'll level off at 43. And we're talking about mostly cloudy, much cooler. Tonight, mostly cloudy, lows around 35. Tuesday, morning breaks of sun, then scattered rain showers developing during the afternoon, highs around 45. Until Wednesday, a mixture of sun and clouds, getting up to 52. Another warm day. The overnight low, though, starts to chill again, 36. Thursday, morning rain, then partly sunny, but a little chilly. It'll be 45 during the day, 25 at night. Friday, mostly sunny skies, but it's going to be cold. 30 degrees will be the high for the day, getting down to 24 at night. And then, don't you know, we may actually get some snow on Saturday, tracking a potential winter storm, though right now it's still early. But they think there's a chance of accumulating snow, eventually changing to rain, highs around 40. Saturday night, rain ends. Clouds clear late. Lows getting down to 29. Interesting weather we have indeed. The weather's been brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And the top of the hour is brought to you by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Con and Plug-in Virtual Reality. In a few minutes after the headlines, Jake will report in on his picks of the week, and they say he was dancing around with the Titans jersey on all night. We'll find out if it's true. And that will be brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Ortito, Fuente, Patrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. That's actually not 204. I got to change that. Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days. Want to shout out to Mitchell. Sent us a text saying, I can't believe you and George Latimer are talking about Yogi Bear, but I do remember Boo Boo Bear as well. Smarter than your average bear. I love that stuff. I actually was I was a Flintstone fan as well. And I also want to shout out to one of my hockey buddies. He may not want it to be public, so I'll just say if he's listening while he's going for tests, took ill over the weekend. And he knows I'm listening, and I think he's listening. And I just wanted to wish him the very best. Hope the tests get well and go well, and hope to see you on the rink real soon. And some of the headlines we're looking at this morning, we're going to ask Jake to take his seat of success, well, it's in total success, and get himself ready when we get to Jake's picks of the week. But Record Show Westchester discussed the end of Playland deal before the dispute. County Executive George Latimer, spokeswoman, shared an internal draft statement that said Latimer wanted to terminate a 30-year contract with Standard Amusements more than a year before his April 2019 announcements that he was ending the deal. This, according to recently released court records. A separate email indicated that Latimer's staff coordinated with Catherine Parker, a county lawmaker, on Parker's talking points ahead of a March 2018 news conference. The daughter of the Muncie stabbing victim has started a GoFundMe page to help pay for the medical bills of Mr. Joseph Newman. He's the man who was hit in the head with a machete. He is still unconscious, expected, if he does come out of it, to have brain damage. His daughter, Nikki Cohen, has started a GoFundMe page. It's up to $13,000. They're hoping to get up to $250,000, they say. The funds are needed because the bills are piling up. The GoFundMe page is in the name of Joseph, Josef, Newman, Neumann. Police say a Yorktown man is accused of driving without a license. Officials say earlier this week, 44-year-old Louis Russo was pulled over for having an expired state inspection. They say a further investigation found that Russo was driving with a revoked license and without an ignition interlock device. Now, what's not mentioned in the story, and we credit News 12 with this story, is the interlock device is usually used for a person who, we're not saying this is the case for this particular alleged transgressor, but usually used for someone who in the past had a intoxication offense. So we shall see. And, of course, the big story this morning here in New Rochelle is a 14-year-old has been accused or is alleged to have sexually assaulted another student at the New Rochelle school system. That is all we know right now. Bob Cox should have more when we talk with him at 9 o'clock about that story. The school district is saying it is taking these allegations extremely seriously. Now, when we did the sports stories earlier today, I skipped one. My apologies. And it's one I care about because having watched Mike Miller and the Westchester Knicks several times during my doing some broadcasting for or before their games, Mike Miller and his Knicks needed this one. Indeed, they defeated the Miami Heat yesterday by a score of 124 to 121. And also the Nets won last night as well. But the real stories, and we're about to talk about the real stories, were the football playoffs. And we really need to get into this. That's his music. It is 8:06. It's time for the results. Jake's picks of the week, and the picks are brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Patrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located on Boston Post Road, right here in Larchmont. Open 7 days. We're going to give the scores now, and then we'll see how Jake did. The Titans defeated the Ravens by a score of 28-12. The 49ers over the Vikings, 27-10. The Chiefs, 51-31 over the Texans. But what I wonder, and we'll be asking Jake about, is can the Chiefs afford to give up 31 points when they face this next team, the Green Bay Packers? No, they won't be facing them. They'll be facing the Titans. But the Packers, in a what was really a squeaker if you saw the end of the game, they defeated the Seattle Seahawks by a score of 28-23. And it's time now to get Jake's opinions. Jake, last week, Jake was telling us the Titans all the way, baby. How did he know what the rest of us didn't know? Not yet, Jake. Jake, let's go game by game. How did you do?
We went 3-1 this weekend. Not too bad. Brings us to 5-2-1 on the playoffs.
Okay, let's go game by game, though. Let's take a look at the Titans versus the Ravens. What was the spread, and how did you do?
The Titans were 9-point underdogs, and they handedly beat the Ravens, as I predicted.
As you predicted, no question.
I said they weren't just going to get the 9 points. They were actually going to go and win that game, and they won the game.
Look at you.
Handily.
He has a look of satisfaction on his face. Good for you, Jake. And I, all weekend long, I said, good for Jake. When I saw this game, I said, he knew his stuff and made money for you if you were following him. All righty, 49ers 27, Vikings 10. How'd you do in that game?
Picked that one correctly. The 49ers were 7-point favorites. I had a feeling it wasn't going to be a competitive game. It really wasn't. Sets up a very interesting Final Four for this coming weekend. I must say, I looked at the early point spreads, and both home teams are 7-point favorites. But it's only Monday.
We'll get to that in a minute.
It'll come down by Friday.
We'll get to that in a minute. I want to keep in order. Let's take a look at the Chiefs game.
Well, this was a game of two blowouts. It was 24-0. The
Texans.
Yeah, they were winning 24-0. So there's your one blowout, and then the rest of the game was 51-7 for the Chiefs. So
now, when the game was 24, now who did you have in that game?
I had the Texans, I had 9.5 points.
Yeah.
So I thought I was pretty safe when it was 24-0.
You were smoking one of those Padrons, weren't you?
Thought it was pretty safe. Thought it was in the bag. Turned off the game and went for a walk with the wife.
That was your mistake right there. You don't go for a walk with your sister in the middle of the. All right. Oh, so that's the one you lost.
Yes.
Packers. Now, you had to be, what was the spread on that? Wasn't it 4.5?
It was 4.
4. And you gave 4. So you actually lost that game.
No, got it by 1 point.
Oh, that's right. Yes, you did. Okay, 28-23.
And it came down to a 2-point conversion, failed 2-point conversion by the Seahawks. They tried to get the lead from 5 to 3 instead of going to 4, because they would need the 3 for a field goal. 4 points is essentially worthless at that point. So they missed the 2-point conversion, and I skated by.
Yes, but weren't you worried towards the end until Aaron Rodgers made a couple of key passes, and they were like ground balls. The guy picked it up. The guy had to reach down because if they got the ball back.
He made 2 huge third down throws.
All right, so let's look at next week just a little bit. So who's playing who for the uninitiated?
The Titans, are going to Kansas City. And the Packers are going to San Francisco.
Okay, now, what's the spread in the Titan game so far?
Both home teams are favored by 7.
That's it?
Yep.
Plus, is that because they're home teams? Wow. Okay, now are you probably, and I know it's early in the week, but I do want to make a summary. First of all, folks, we want to congratulate our man, Jake, 3-1 on his picks of the week, and that makes your total what?
For the postseason, 5-2-1. Overall, 29-22-2.
29-2. How did the wheel do? The wheel did pretty good too.
The wheel went 2-2, I believe.
Okay, the wheel won 500. All righty. So let's take a look. Early Jake vibes, early Jake feelings. What are you thinking?
Well, I was very surprised by the Titans spread. I was hoping that it would at least be 8.5. 7 is a bit low. I was kind of thinking that what the Chiefs did to just maul the Texans at the end of that game, I thought it would be at least 8 points. Surprised it's only 7. Love the Packers getting 7 against the 49ers.
No. But who do you like in that game?
Which one?
The Titan game.
It's going to be so hard to go to Kansas City and actually win, but you never know. They're getting hot at the right time.
So you could wind up, come Friday, we could wind up announcing that it's the Titans.
Possibly.
Okay.
I have a feeling the line might go up to around 8 by
Okay.
Friday.
What about the Pack?
Oh, I think the Packers are going to the Super Bowl.
You do? Okay.
Take that 7 points all day.
Now, I'm going to just assume, let's two kids talking sports. You're sure about the Pack? I am too. If they play Kansas City, Aaron Rodgers against Mahomes.
Be an
I really
all-time
like that.
Super Bowl.
Now, I don't know enough about football to criticize the Chiefs. But when you won 51-31, and being a coach of sports myself, the 31 troubles me.
They did not come out to play. The Texans had a bit of, felt disrespected, and they came out swinging, took a 24-0 lead. But then the Texans coach made some terrible decisions
Such
that I
as?
didn't understand. Wasting timeouts just to kick a field goal when he should have gone for it on 4th and short. Fake punts. It just seemed like he was in over his head, and Kansas City just mauled them at that point.
No kidding. All righty, so folks, you have it. Jake 3-1, and we go to next week. The Titans go into Kansas City. The Packers go into San Francisco. Both teams favored. So what you're telling me is, it seems like my pick of the week next week is going to be the Pack, because I get 7 points and Aaron Rodgers.
And
What's so good about San Francisco?
a lot of people like their lines. Offensive line, defensive line. I like their quarterback, but again, like I said about Lamar Jackson, he's never been in the spot.
Who is this guy? Tannehill? Who's their quarterback?
Garoppolo,
Oh, Garoppolo. Okay.
Brady's old backup.
Okay. Oh,
So-
that's right. He's a good ball player in this
So
deal.
let's see him under. We all know Aaron Rodgers can do it, but we don't know if he can do it.
Okay, since you're here and since you're a football guy, we need to go into what's been going on in New York. Even though it appeared that this young man, Judge, was, the 3 o'clock in the morning girl at the end of the boy at the end of the bar, a lot of good things are coming out. Do you think that's just spin, or do you get the feel that he may have some gravitas?
I think a little bit of both. What is fascinating to me is Belichick's number one assistant, his offensive guy, his play caller. The Giants wanted to meet with him. The Pats were done with their season, so he could have allowed him to go interview for the Giants job, but he did not allow his offensive coordinator to get the interview. But he did praise Judge, who was his wide receiver special teams coach, praised him enough to get the Giants really interested in him.
Wow. Now, what about now, when you hold back a guy from going for a head coaching job, you better be paying him a lot of money.
I'm sure he's one of the highest paid offensive coordinators in the league.
Now, because again, no one ever talks about assistant coaches in the other sports or bench bosses. In football, what's a top offensive coordinator probably make?
$2 million.
Okay, so they're not running benefits for this guy.
No. Well, if this Rule guy who's never coached in the NFL
He's
can
gonna
be
get
the
$5
sixth highest NFL coach already.
Well, that's because it's New York. You get the abuse. That's why.
He's going to Carolina, but they
no,
threw
right.
all that money at him to keep him away
Oh, yes,
from
yes,
the
yes.
New York.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah.
But that's why it cost that much, because they were competing with New York. No, I was thinking about Judge. My apologies.
Yeah, I
think
don't
they're
even
paying
know what Judge is making.
5 or 6 they're going to
yeah.
give him, yeah. And I guess just the abuse you take in New York. I mean, I don't know. I didn't do a lot of sports in my last 2 morning gigs because it just wasn't part of the format. I added them to this for a number of reasons, which people are interested in and the demographic. And I'm glad I did. But one of the things I'm learning is the, certainly more about football, but also the salaries that have gone up to the degree they've gone up in all the sports. And I think the best indicator is probably hockey, where they used to make garbage. Now even also ran guys make $2.5 million, $3 million, and that's as it should be. I mean, they were just underpaid for so long.
Well, it's all the TV networks, the TV
and
contracts.
they're the bottom of the rung.
I know. NHL's on. Is it the CBS Sports Network they're
NBC.
on?
They're
NBC.
on NBC Sports. They're up in Canada. They have a huge package out of.
And there's I see right here. There's an NHL network.
Yeah, there
is that
an
a paid?
NHL
You have to pay
network.
extra for that.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. But but the great thing about New York is if you have most packages, if you have MSG, you get 3 teams.
You get MSG and the MSG Plus.
Yeah, and even in New York, a lot of them carry the Philly station on their package, so you wind up with 4 hockey teams before you even say wow. So, but it's a big business, and hockey now has become second to football in great highlights. It was something I remember when I was young, and they didn't cover hockey well on TV. I was always jealous. Because nothing, I have to say this, even though I'm a hockey fan, nothing beats football highlights. It's just so amenable to it. But hockey, if you played the game and you watched it up close, you knew that someday someone would turn it into, I mean, the hits, the skating, and people like, have you ever watched yet? Have you taken me up on watching McDavid?
I have not yet.
You need to go on YouTube. Even while you sit in your little perch there, go on YouTube and look at, they got his 10 best. He is otherworldly. I mean, imagine a quarterback. I don't know if I could do the analogy right, but imagine a quarterback who decided that he was going to be the back and just look at a hole in the line. And this guy, no one challenges 1-on-2. I mean, they may challenge, but it's just trying to pull the defenseman towards you to make a play and maybe split the D once a season. There'll be 3 guys back. He'll be alone, and he'll have all 3 spinning. You got to see it's he has his speed is otherworldly, but it's not so much his speed, it's his agility and what he can do with his hands with the puck. I mean, he'll at the very last second when you think he has nothing left, he makes one more move and puts the puck under the bar, off the goalie's back. The only person similar to him, but very different, was Gretzky. But Gretzky literally had something in the best possible way wrong with him. He saw the game a half second before everybody else. It's just weird. But he didn't skate as well as this guy, didn't shoot as well, and his hands weren't as good. Gretzky was just some sort of a freak of nature. He almost didn't count. He was the greatest ever offensively, but this guy is the greatest normal human being that I've ever seen. And I'm around a long time, so you owe it to yourself to watch. Every time I tell people, they go, "Oh my God,
Let's really check that out."
Yeah, you really should. I did want to ask you. So what else do you know about all these coaches?
What the coaches that are still in it in the Final Four?
Yeah,
I like the Titans coach Vrabel. He's got a lot of Belichick. He came from Belichick.
He came from Belichick. He was a
didn't
backup
coach.
quarterback, right?
No, he was a defensive player, but he never coached for Belichick. But he was his defensive leader for years, so I like him a lot.
Oh yeah, isn't he the guy he had a falling out with for a while?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
And then I love Andy Reid, the Chiefs coach. He's been around forever. He was the old Eagles coach. I always root for him, but I won't be rooting for him this weekend. And the Packers and 49ers have 2 young coaches. The Packers coach LaFleur didn't really get along with Rodgers for most of the beginning of the season. They butted heads, and it seems like Rodgers kind of won out. They had differences in play calling, but this is Rodgers' team, and he calls the shots. No first-year coach is going to, supersede him.
Wow. Well, thank goodness you're here, because I didn't know enough. In addition to the other things you do, you add a lot of texture to our football coverage, and I'm learning every day. Although a couple of other questions before I go, and I'm going to remind people, Hezi Aris is up next. He is the managing editor and the publisher of the Yonkers Tribune.
I will take Clemson tonight in the national championship game.
That's tonight? It
Yes.
shows how little I know. Tell people about that before we go. Why?
Clemson LSU would be interesting. It could very well be the top pick in this coming draft and the top pick in next year's draft. 2 quarterbacks. One quarterback is not allowed to leave yet, the Clemson quarterback, but the LSU quarterback should be the number 1 pick.
Can't get my wallet out. This is live, folks. Wow.
But I will take Clemson, and they are getting 5.5 points. Should be a fascinating game.
Okay, well, that's what you'll be watching tonight. Jake, I can't tell you We are learning so much, folks. Jake's picks of the week, and he'll have his big picks next week as well. Who will be victorious? The Titans are playing Kansas City. The Pack is playing San Francisco. KC and SF are home, and they both have second points. This week's football results were brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo, Fuente, Padrons, and more. I've got to buy you a coffee for your victory feed. Get a bag of chips or something. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located on Boston Post Road, Larchmont, open 7 days. The Jakester, 29-22-2. Wouldn't you like your team to have that record? It is 8:21. And let's check the temperature, and then we're going to go straight to Hezi Aris. We're going to call him right now. Hezi Aris is the managing editor and publisher of the Yonkers Tribune.
Your call has been forwarded to an audio.
He'll call back. The Yonkers Tribune, and someone we respect a great deal. And he's going to be joining us in a moment, but it is 32 degrees. Let me just double check that everything is cool with the weather. 32 degrees. That could be him now. All right, I'm going to hang, and then I am going to try again. I should let him know. Hezi, you're seeing a 718 number. Nope, he will call back. And we missed him by a minute or two. It is 32. And it's going to get up to 47 today. Broken clouds, although we don't have any rain in the forecast. Tonight, mostly cloudy with lows around 35 degrees. Again, Hezi Aris is up next, and there he is. And later on, we'll talk with Bob Cox. As you know, Hezi is the managing editor and the publisher of Yonkers Tribune. In the last couple of weeks, he's been tied up, as we said earlier, about our own shop here. The business of broadcasting, sometimes you need to cover and deal with other stuff. It is our pleasure to have, once again, one of the fine journalists here in Westchester County, Hezi Aris, the publisher and editor of the Yonkers Tribune. Good morning, Hezi.
Good morning. I can't believe that you described it so well. Other stuff. Oh, this is the best. I've got to remember to use that line.
Don't you like it? It's great to
I love it.
Well, you know what? People there's a couple of days this week we'll have recorded shows, because we got to take the business of radio. We have stuff to do too. But anyway, let's get what's new in your world. What are the top stories that you're covering?
I don't know if there's anything top story at the moment other than it's like we're chugging along. So we're hiring new people in the fire department. We're hiring new people in the police department. Everything's going great. The sun is shining. The weather's good. I don't know what else to tell you. There are other breaking stories. Well, I guess like one thing is I covered this a few months ago when we were trying to hire new people for the police department, and we wrote about one guy who evidently is a relative of the Spano family, and but evidently he worked for the Spano Oil, which is a company that they had. I think it's one of the first big companies that they ever put together, and they deliver oil. But he has a record a mile long. So when he dropped off the oil, he also had sticky fingers, and he picked up some stuff from the house. So he has a record of this all over the place. In Mount Vernon, there's stuff written about him, in the police department, in Tarrytown, but there were never any prosecutions, because you have clout, so you can get away with this stuff. So, but evidently we found out that he got a gun, claiming that he has the right to have a gun because he owned a seafood restaurant, which he never owned. And evidently, even though everybody hears that everyone is being vetted, there is no vetting process. It's just something that we're told, and we expect that it's being done, but it's not. And then the thing that's interesting is the people who do the vetting in the police department in Yonkers, they're also relatives of the family. So they're not going to come up with any information about anybody that's coming in and looking to get a job. Well, anyway, after we wrote the article months ago, they dropped him. And the shame of it all is they also dropped two other family members whose last name was Spano. And that's really a shame because they have a good reputation, good upstanding people, but they took them off the list, and they only added them a couple of weeks ago, and they were sworn in as probation officers, which is great, and they deserve it. Because I'm not gunning after anybody that is deserving of a job just because of their name or their family affiliation or lack of a family affiliation. But this guy is now, guess what? He's number 14 on the fire department list. So they're gonna make him a probationary firefighter, and which is interesting. And I called up some people. I said, "What's wrong with you? He's got a record that the police didn't accept. How come you're going to accept him in the fire department? You know, if you could steal when you go in and deliver oil, you could also steal when you're in the house of somebody's house or apartment, and you're fighting a fire, and then you can pick up something along the way. So why would you do that?
Makes
no
sense
to me. But then the other, the other thing is, I don't understand a lot of things in life. That's the problem. Maybe that's the problem. But the thing is that on top of all of that, they're going to get this guy, and since he's number 14, in order to make it look good, they're not going to go just to number 14 to pick him up. But they're going to probably go to 16 or 17 or 18 in order to make it seem, he was qualified. No, he's not. However, they're going to go there in order to cover their tracks. And the thing that's really outrageous is not only are we going to train him, who's not qualified, but we're going to train maybe 2 or 3 or 4 others beyond him that are not qualified either. And they shouldn't even be on the list because they weren't on the list. And this is the way we work it. This is part of the process in Yonkers. I don't know if it works like that anywhere else, but I don't think so.
Well, I'm not surprised that you uncovered it, and I am no longer surprised at these things at all. As I've said many times to many people, the biggest lesson I've learned doing news for 15 years is it really is who you know. Hezi Aris, our guest here on Radio Westchester. Hezi, we saw where there was they got some money from schools, I guess from the state, for $750,000. But the problems with the schools in your city, in Yonkers, are legion. What's $750,000 going to do? I mean, it's better than nothing, but
it's better than nothing, but it doesn't amount to anything in reality. I think the purpose of the $750,000 was to upgrade an auditorium or something like that.
Yes.
I looked at it so quickly and I said, what are they wasting time for? Look, the crux of the issue is, number one, education. How do you disseminate educational excellence to a population of students that you are in care of? And the problem is that that's not the number one focus.
No, it is not.
It seems that we're not focusing on that. I'm embarrassed to say we don't even have enough money to pay for $30,000 to pay for kids who have the aptitude and the grade level to consider playing football, but they need lessons. Just like everybody else, you got to learn the craft. It's just because you're playing on the street, it doesn't mean that you could do it on a football
of course.
pitch or on. So that's what they've got to learn. But we don't even have $30,000 for that. So we are so strapped. We have nothing. And then we have to remember too that the Board of Education lauds the fact that 35% of our kids in Yonkers schools are of what do they call it? They have a passing grade. I think that's not the right term, but they had a passing grade of 35% of the entire school body in reading, English, and in math. 65% are not proficient. That's the word. The proficiency of 35%, whereas opposed to non-proficiency by 65%. And they throw this up as this is big news. Yeah, it's big news because you're failing. That's why it's big news. But nobody discusses that.
Unbelievable. What else you got for us this morning as we pass through 8:30?
Let me see. I don't really know. I'm working on a few projects, but they're too soon to reveal because I need to corroborate numbers and information.
Okay.
But so that's been the
I
problem.
got some more
well,
stuff
we
for
have
you.
set up.
How will
Okay.
no? Let me cover this one.
You go ahead.
Because we got time.
Go ahead. Sure.
How will the shortfall? We had Latimer on earlier. The $6 million shortfall for Albany.
Right.
How do you think that's going to hit the city of Yonkers? Now I know you have a different school relationship, but Medicaid you probably get whacked with too. No.
Oh yeah.
With the county, yeah.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, look, it's a $6.1 billion shortfall in the state budget. And the real problem is that it's unlikely that Yonkers is going to get any extra money. And, I've always wondered, why is it that we never had a better formula that allowed for Yonkers to get a better cut of education costs? So there are some places that may get 98% reimbursement for building a school. We're on the level of getting 70%. We can't afford to build a school because we can't afford the difference of in $100 million building. We can't afford the $30 million because that translates to a 10% increase in our tax base. Well, and that's also illegal, so we can't even exceed the 2%. So the point is, we're between a rock and a hard place. But I think at the end of the day that the governor and the state legislature just simply don't trust that we'll take care of the money as we're supposed to. What is the other reason why we're not getting our fair share? The formula stinks just because we reside in a very wealthy community, Westchester County, but we have a very large proportion of people who are on some sort of subsidy, whether it be for food or for housing. And so we have also an immigrant population, and we can't cut it. And our taxes are high, but at the same time, we don't have a formula for generating money in the city, and I don't understand that either. Look at all the development. What are we getting out of the development? Do you know? Because I don't know.
No, I do not.
They never break up the prices.
I rely on you for that, Hezzy.
Well, they don't give us the numbers.
No.
And isn't it interesting, for the fourth largest city in the state, Westchester County, it's not their fault, but Westchester County has been giving an accounting of what they earn, but they don't break out the Yonkers numbers. So we never know what's going on in our economy. And when you ask City Hall, well, how are we doing? Where is the additional money coming from? Are we doing well at Ridge Hill? Are we doing well at the Westchester County Mall? I mean, at the Westchester County Mall. All of these places, we don't have a clue what's going on there. So how do we know if we're successful in anything? And the answer is we don't.
No.
Unless they get the numbers in Yonkers and nobody else gets it.
It's really
Never
interesting
made public.
stuff. We're talking with Hezzy Harris, the managing editor and publisher of the Yonkers Tribune. Now, I'm sure they're happy with that, but Yonkers being a city of its size, it's always, and now we have Radio Westchester, and because of you and your radio show as well, we do a lot more coverage of Yonkers than historically. But how come it's never had its own radio station and its own big time newspaper? And again, I'm glad you're there. Why the city is such a big city, yet it gets to fly under the radar to some extent?
Because they've always controlled the press in Yonkers. Look, the Journal News, as great as it used to be under the Herald Statesman banner, and even though they tried desperately as the Journal News, unfortunately, and they just got merged into another company, of which the Gannett part of it is at 49%, which is the owners of the Journal News, and another company, I don't know, that owns the other 51%. But it doesn't matter. The circulation of the Journal News in all three counties, Westchester included, it's under 25,000 print papers. And last I read, it was at at about 1,100 circulation online.
Well, the print,
And
yeah.
so even if
1,100?
1,100, and even if we give them, the time of day and say, okay, well, maybe you can get more. Even if I give them 5,000, 5,000 is bupkis in my world. It means nothing. 5,000? I got 108,000, and I haven't redone my numbers in over a year.
Well, that's
pointless.
Just
numbers.
And the paper has maybe 1/6 the stories of what's on the web. The paper has that one large sheet, one paper, and then it's really USA Today after that. So, geez.
Exactly. Well, that's the problem. How do you cover a county, just Westchester alone? How do you cover a county where that has 1.2 million people, and your circulation is 25,000 in print, and under probably 5,000 online? Hey, they're giving their newspaper away at $6 for 6 months. What does that tell you? It tells you they're in deep trouble.
Why never a radio
and they're
station?
Not going anywhere.
Why never a radio station or a TV station? And do they at least have a Yonkers public access like White Plains has, like New Rochelle has? Do they have that?
Yeah, they supposedly have that, but I tried years ago to use that, but it never went anywhere. Always trouble, always difficulty. And maybe some people use that system. I think now they might be broadcasting maybe once a week. But guess what? They're not in Yonkers. They go to White Plains to get it done.
Oh, to the studios in White Plains. Yeah, I'm sure you'd be
studios in White Plains.
Guys like John Bailey broadcast out of there.
Yeah, absolutely. John Bailey's that's probably where they go, to John Bailey's place, and or where he does his recordings. Look, it's a real problem because the problem with Yonkers has always been, not just to this administration, but prior administrations, they wanted to control the news. So they controlled the news by having newspaper people come to them once a week, and they were given a slew of stories that they could write. And all the information was really a regurgitation of what they were told. So but I realized from the very beginning that they weren't telling me the truth because I used to talk to people, and I still do, and I realized they never validated what they said. Like, you've heard the thing that's been going on for at least 8 years that I'm aware of, because I was following the police more at that point. They keep saying that the crime rate is down in Yonkers. Really? You see the statistics anywhere?
I make fun of that all the time.
Where are they? Well, let's say we had 1,000 incidences, and they took care of all of them. Okay, so then that's great. But we don't know if we had 1,000 incidences or if we had 5. And they don't want to know. And just give you one last thing. The police department has not sent me a press release of any crime statistics in the last 3 months. And I'm not the only one. All the other outlets don't get any statistics, don't get any information. They don't know if somebody was held up in Getty Square. And I'm not telling you that somebody did. I'm just telling you nothing is happening. So why are we hiring all these police people if we don't need them? We don't have crime.
Beats the heck out of me once again, Hezzy Harris. It is 8:39. Hey, listen, I got some fun for you before you go. You want to try this out?
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Sure.
I've been asking this of different people who called in. What is something you remember from childhood and realize as an adult was something totally different than you thought it was at the time? I mean, my classic thing was I used to kiss candy up to God. I could fall in a mud hole with muskrats, and if I kissed it up to God, I thought it was okay.
You were just you were a more imaginative child than I was.
No, and another one was what was the other one? My mother bought me a music box. I wanted a radio. She bought me one of those. Where it plays a little music thing. I forget what it's called now, but and it played Vienna Woods. I still remember that. I always thought there was a little person in there playing. Well, what were your things like that when you were a child that you later learned were just not so?
Well, but that's a tough question.
Well, that's why we do it.
I don't know if I could go back that far. My God, I don't even remember if I remember.
Well, then let's bring it to something that's meaningful. I'll give you
Okay.
I'll give you a couple of examples.
Okay.
I get asked, again, because I changed careers 20 years ago, I do get asked, what did you learn? And one of them is, it really is who you know.
Correct.
The second thing is the behavior of district attorneys leaves a lot to be desired. They'd rather win than get justice in many cases. And the third thing is, I've been disappointed in the quality of judges. Now, but what about you? Since you've become
those become very relevant. I read only very recently, and I said, "Oh my God, it's an aha moment," because I was raised in almost to follow the straight and narrow, and always did, but always had a mind so I could think it out. And my parents demanded that I think things out and to try to recognize what was. But it dawned on me a couple of weeks ago when somebody wrote that we have laws, but the question is, do we have justice? That's one thing that became very relevant, and that becomes really questionable if we have. So we have a lot of laws, no justice. Then we have another situation where you have people who vie for elected office, and their number one concern is to get elected. And their number two concern is to get reelected. And their number three concern is to get reelected. And isn't that interesting? Because, constantly reelected, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It has nothing to do with the people that they are supposed to represent. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody is like that, but show me the people out there. Like I look at Yonkers, for example, and I say, okay, so show me the people there that are really working for the interest of the public interest of the people they claim to represent. And then also we have a lot of people who vie for our attention and vie for our vote, and they say one thing, and we believe them because we want to believe them. It's not that we're really dumb and stupid, because we expect people to tell us the truth. But when they get into office, they do exactly the opposite.
Well, yeah.
How does that come about?
No, but I'm glad you're bringing these up, because now you've tickled what is my number 4 item, and I have and I have this out now with a lot of August and really good political scientists, which is when you tell me, well, that's politics, that is an intellectual get out of jail free card. And I don't know. In other words, when they say that's politics, well, of course they'll pump a lie out. Of course they'll take advantage of something that isn't true. Of course they'll blow up so that everybody feels they have to lie even more egregiously and never admit to an error. I mean, I'm sick of it to the point where I love what I do and it keeps me sane. But when I'm not doing this anymore, I probably won't pay much attention to politics. I've lost so much respect for the process. I did a story today. Now listen to this. This doesn't make you sick.
Okay.
Now you're familiar with Bridgegate, right? Out in New Jersey. Well, it's going to the Supreme Court tomorrow. And do you know what the premise of the petitioners is? That that closing the bridge to get even with the mayor and making all those hundreds of thousands of people late for work, maybe late for visiting a dying parent, maybe late for whatever, that is politics and therefore isn't covered by the usual laws. I am outraged. And I will be, when this thing comes in June, in other words, it's just politics. If I have to hear that one more time, and I guess in a free society, I never expected it to be pure, but I never expected that after my 15th year in this business, I would lose so much respect for the process. And I'm not talking about the guy or gal that feels, well, my constituents want this, even though it's against my better judgment, I'm going to do it. I don't agree with it, but I get it. But when I see like what both sides are doing with this issue, just for the sake of votes. Pelosi wants, for example, Mr. What's his face, the former
Trump?
No, not Trump. Oh, come on, Robert. The former UN ambassador and national security advisor. We're both having a senior moment. She wants him to testify. He wants to testify.
Okay. Oh, Bolton.
Yeah, thank you.
Bolton,
You know how
he's
it
the
is.
one that's thinking of it.
Now,
Yeah.
now, there's no harm in him testifying except political harm, because but it allows the conservatives to keep, not the conservatives, that's not fair, but the Trumpites to continue to say no one with direct evidence has ever talked, no one who's ever actually talked to the president. Well, he's there and you know it. Stop treating us like we're stupid.
Right.
Similarly,
Right.
the Democrats know that the Republicans are going to acquit this guy. So they want this out there to just scrape 1 or 2 more votes from the few people who actually believe no one has really talked to the president. But it's so disingenuous. But yet we're just pawns, and it sickens me. It really bothers
but
me.
we're not pawns.
Not
and
if we stand
it would
up.
really be, well, that's the point. So I hope that if and when you decide that you want to hang it up and get out of the radio business or the reporting business, that you're still engaged, because the reason why am I slugging it out in a city like Yonkers? I could write anywhere. I write very, very well, and it's a very well respected product that I put out, and it has integrity. And you know what's interesting is that while I write what has integrity and I can validate, other media do not, and that's one of the problems in Westchester County. If you go to New York City, what you see on CBS, on ABC, NBC, WPIX, Fox News, whatever, they all agree about the same story. They may give you a different slant, but the New York Times, the Daily News, the New York Post, Newsday, whatever you look at, they all cover the same thing. And what's interesting is each one validates the other. They may have more information than the other, but the point is basically they're going in the same direction, or they're dealing with issues that are inclusive of that particular concern. So that's the problem. We don't have credible people, and it's all about making a buck. And the news business is more about selling advertising than anything else.
And it's troubling, because as you do what you do and I do what I do here for the opposite reason. I mean, we need to make a living, but I try and do, as I think you know, a very honest show. And it is a curse sometimes, because there are people on both sides of the aisle we will never reach. We will never reach. They'll never be reasonable. It's just not going to happen. And
but that's the nature of things. But you need to tell the story to the best of your capacity, and to stay on and to follow a road of your ethical standard. And we don't have a way of gauging anybody's ethical standards. But then after a while, you get to know what they think and what they say and how they say it, and you can either trust the integrity of their reporting or you don't. And we're not here to convince everybody, but we're there to give them enough information, and probably even more than they need, but enough information so they could stand up to what they believe because they have proof.
Well, let me give you a plug about that. 849, one of the great things about your paper now, and when you ran the Westchester Guardian, lots of content. There's stories. There's in-depth stories. It's not, a lot of weeklies are 1 page of news and 20 pages of ads. Yeah. But you've got a lot of content. You can take one of your publications on your phone, or when it was in hard copy, take it to the doctor's office and wait for an hour and a half and not have to throw it out yet. That's right. That's a great thing.
You know why? Because we don't have a very narrow interest. So people may be interested in politics, but they're also interested in what's going on at the schools, and they're mostly interested in what's going on in taxation. There are also a lot of atrocities around the world. So, hey, I cover female genital mutilation.
Oh, I'm glad you do.
And we report about it.
Yep.
Yeah, because it's important, and a lot of people want to make believe it doesn't happen, but yes, it does. It's part of a culture, too, that has somehow infused itself into the American structure. And that's only happened probably in the last 50 years. and then we have people who are enslaved by in their work and also sexually, as we notice now with all these allegations here and there. But it's been happening, and we've been covering ourselves up and making believe it doesn't happen, and that doesn't work.
No, it does not.
People are interested, and we need to tell them where it's at. And we also need to not revise, but actually resurrect a history that we have long forgotten, that actually informs us to this day. But those people that are ignorant don't remember, so they have no basis to even get to the point where we are today. And that's what I do a lot too.
Well,
tell them the way it was, and then let them make their own decisions. But I also give them my conclusions and base it on what the history tells me. I'm not smarter than anybody else, but that's the reality. That's the way it should be.
We've been talking about Yogi Bear today. You are smarter than the average bear, Hezzy Harris. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for making time for us this morning, and we'll get you back on your usual schedule. Hezzy Harris, everybody, please go to the website. Listen to his show. It starts at 10 o'clock. Where can they find it?
Just go to the YonkersTribune.com website, and you'll see in the upper right-hand side the link to the show. Every day we operate, which is Monday to Friday, there's a different link, and the show is live, and people can call, and it's an interaction. It's all done by telephone. We don't have a studio like you do, but it works.
Well, thank you very much. Hezzy Harris, everybody.
My pleasure.
Yonkers Tribune. We go next. Let's go to the next line. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning. This is Tom Abenanti. How are you, Bob?
I knew it was, and I just thought I'd say hello to you. Happy New Year. I hope you
Happy New Year to you also.
A great holiday. Thank you for your contributions to the program and for joining our team. Of course, Tom Abenanti is one of the best-known assemblymen here in Westchester County. Very active, very vocal, pushes back on the governor when the governor needs it, probably more than any other person at that level in the State House.
Well, that's my job, you know. I mean, I try to propose policy, try to make sure that we get things done for our local community. But the job of the legislature is to act as a balance and a critic of the governor. I mean, we see down in Washington a failure of Congress to push back on the president, but you know, we don't want the same thing to happen in Albany. I'm up in Albany now. This is going to be our first full week of work in the assembly. Last week was a bit more ceremonial. We had a couple of days. We had the State of the State. We had the Speaker proposing his proposals. We kind of organized, and we're going to have our first committee meetings tomorrow. We have 350 bills on our agenda already, either left over from last year or coming back because we passed them in our House. They didn't get passed in the Senate. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. But I wanted to comment on the State of the State. If you,
I was going to go there literally after your opening remarks. So two things. One, and I'm going to go to the thing that troubled me first, and then we'll go to the rest of it. I was not kind to the governor. I have to be honest. I think he ignored this issue of at least commenting about the bail to his own peril. And then the bail issue, and then it was followed up by Hasty saying, or Hasty, if I mispronounce it, my apologies to the leader, saying he doesn't want to do anything about it. And is the Democratic Party trying to do to itself what the Tea Party did to the Republicans?
No, I think what happened here is I think that some people are making a big issue out of nothing. But so for your listeners, let's back up for a second. We have had up until now a system where the rich commit a crime,
yes, no
and
question.
They get out of jail while they're waiting for the trial.
Yes.
The poor, on the other hand, no matter how minor the crime, they end up in jail. And so it's never been a system of preventive detention. It just worked out that way because with poor people, they were in jail. rich people. I mean, Harvey Weinstein, look at him. He's out with all those allegations against him.
George took me down this path today too, but my answer is, why would notwithstanding a little discretion for a judge who can deem someone a risk, why can't they hold him?
Because it's never been about risk. It's been about risk of not appearing. And so that's very hard for the public to understand, because they see somebody who they see as dangerous and they say, well, how come you're letting him out? Well, the answer is we're not prejudging him. We don't know that he's guilty or that she's guilty. And that's a very, very difficult concept. I understand that. It's a very difficult concept because most people have never thought of it in those terms.
Well, doing what I do, Assemblyman, I have had to, and I skewed liberal on this issue, and I have a conservative lawyer who calls in, whom you may know, by the way, who agrees with you, Mr. Mike Duffy, But there are times when comments, in other words, this opens up a can of worms. Let me finish this. This opens up a can of worms. That if the court system can't get to these cases more quickly, well then they are accountable for it. But if someone and I know it's anecdotal, but if someone gets out and then they go and commit another crime and comes back in, or at least they've been charged twice, that guy's a high risk guy.
Well, let me say to you that we did put a whole series of other mechanisms in place. There have been several situations where the DAs have complained that judges have let people out. First of all, the DAs could upcharge like they always used to do.
Well, yes, that's true.
What the DA charges a person with determines what the discretion of the judge is and what the power of the judge is. So if there's a real serious situation here, all of a sudden the DAs are not charging at the top, they're charging at the bottom, and they're letting people, so that the judge has no discretion and they has to let them go. The DA, if they think the person was committed a serious crime and is a danger to the community, can charge a little bit higher so that they get out of those crimes that automatically release someone while they're awaiting trial. Secondly, we've given the judges a whole series of other mechanisms. For example, it was just a situation down in the city of New York where the judge said this person was here yesterday and now he's back today. Well, you know what? I detected this person's got some mental problems here, and I'm going to send them over for some mental testing.
That's fine.
And so he got the person off the street. And there are ways of doing this within the mechanism. But we're trying to stop the wholesale jailing of people.
I understand that. And Assembly, we have to move on to another issue, but I'm just going to fly this caveat out there, and then we'll talk about it some other day. This is cautionary because I cover the news been a lot of years now. The left is at risk of being agenda-driven at the point to the point of not being relevant anymore.
That's a very valid point. We've got to be practical, and that was the point the governor made. That there's a practical.
The governor wussed out. The governor disappointed me, and it's not the first time.
Well, he disappointed me also. It's what he didn't say.
Well, let's go on.
He started off by saying he was a progressive, and then he spoke about conservative proposals.
Well, yeah, but he did that. Remember when he ran 10 years ago? All of a sudden, he was the second coming of Ronald Reagan.
Right. Well, this governor speaks from the left and governs from the right. I mean, that's my view of him. He tries to sound like a progressive, but what he did in this situation was he used a lot of progressive rhetoric, and then his proposals just weren't there. They didn't match the rhetoric. And the few things that he did propose of any substance, I think, were more center-right. You have another issue, though. What's your other issue?
No. That was it. I wanted you to get to your comments about his.
That's my sense. Look, he didn't talk about the needs that we have in our society. He didn't talk about any of our vulnerable people. He didn't talk about senior citizens who are being pressed and aren't getting the services they need. He didn't talk about poor people. He didn't talk about people with disabilities. I was fascinated to read yesterday that every one of the Democratic presidential candidates has put forward a proposal to deal with people with special needs, because they realized that some 1/3, I was amazed to see that number, 1/3 of the population in the United States has some kind of a disability. And I look at that and I'm saying we are really missing the boat here as Democrats. We should be taking care of people, and it's cheaper to do it right than it is to let the problems fester. I mean, you talk about homelessness. That's costing us huge, really big bucks when we're not dealing with the issues. People have mental illness. People can't afford the housing that they need, and their kids are suffering, and their kids then go on to commit crimes. Why are we not dealing with all of these ills of society that we used to talk about? We can afford to do it. In fact, we can't afford to not do it. You've got a lot of kids with special needs who, with a little bit of help, become productive citizens, pay taxes, have a good life. But if you don't give them the right education and the right help, they're lost and they become a drain on society. This is what we used to believe, and we used to do something about it. And we're not doing anything about it. I'm not quite sure why. And I think the governor's got a lead in that area and hasn't been leading in that area.
You must have a surmise, Assemblyman. I mean, the governor's got a $6 billion budget shortfall. The last thing he probably wants to do is spend money on mental illness, which we all know.
Well, look, some of that is made up. You know, if you let all of the formulas in state law run, then you come out with these numbers. But we never let the formulas run. You always change them year after year after year. The formulas get adjusted. $6 billion is a lot of money. Yes, that is true. But that's what he's saying. We've got to look and see what's really there. I mean, let's face it. Last year he rolled over $2 billion worth of bills that he didn't pay, and nobody's claiming the money wasn't there. He just didn't want to pay them because his spending would have gone over his target number. So he rolled it over into this year without telling us, and that automatically gives us a $2 billion deficit. And if the way the budget was constructed, that you had a $2 billion shortfall last year above his target, then you've got $2 billion more above his target this year, and that's $4 billion right there. So I don't know where the other $2 billion is coming from. We'll have to take a look at that, and we're anticipating his budget within the next few weeks, and that's when we can have this conversation.
Is he setting
but let's
the
face
stage?
it, he's been in charge for 10 years. If there's a problem, he didn't plan properly.
Now, is he setting the stage maybe? Is he setting this number out there so that we'll be grateful for lesser problems? You know the line from Slapshot? Oh, they're just saying they'll close the plant so people will be grateful that they got jobs, if you remember that line.
Exactly. I really think there's a lot of that, yes. There's an old line, a politician is a person who rocks the boat and then says he's the only one who can calm the waters. Andrew Cuomo is very good at that. He's very good at that. He's a very good politician. He understands what people want to hear, and he does it very, very well. I mean, he had some good proposals in his budget. I will credit him for that. He's done some very good things, but there's more to be done. I mean, you know, let's face it. He's got all these big projects going out there. He's stimulated them. He's pushed them. He's helped. He's got private industry doing a lot of stuff, like, for example, at LaGuardia Airport. Most of that's being paid for by private industry, not by the state. And he's taking credit for it. That's fine. It needed the renovation. But what about the day-to-day problems? You know, we've got potholes on our roads. Our bridges are in terrible shape. How are we going to take care of that stuff? You know, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that he didn't talk about. And I think we have to hold his feet to the fire and say, you've got to talk about these things, and we've got to deal with these problems, because people drive on regular roads more than they go to LaGuardia Airport, or more than they go to these other places. Penn Station is a disaster, yes. But you've been governor for 10 years. Don't tell us now that out of nowhere there's a $6 billion deficit. You've been in charge for 10 years now. You can't blame somebody else. You're the one who put us in this situation. Why did you not plan? It's not like we're having a downturn in the economy. He's still talking about tax cuts.
Yeah, I know
he is.
How do you
talk about tax cuts with a $6 billion deficit?
Go figure. Hey, Tom Avenante, welcome back. Welcome home. We'll see you again next week at this time. A lot more to talk about.
Yes, we will.
Thank you, sir.
All right, very good. Thank you. Bye.
All right, coming up as we enter the long form, it's 9:04 long form portion of our day. Bob Cox, the managing editor and publisher of Talk of the Sound, considered the source since 2008. We're going to take a look at the weather now before we move on to rock. It is 36 degrees. Warming up it is. Going to get up to 47 today. Getting up to 47 today. And we'll have broken clouds off and on throughout about today. Now, tonight mostly cloudy with lows around 35. Normal average low is 18 degrees, by the way. Tuesday, morning breaks of sun, then scattered rain showers developing during the afternoon, highs around 45. Late, it will be late clearing tomorrow, lows near 38. Now, Wednesday, a mixture of sun and clouds. The high will be 52 degrees, the overnight low 36. Morning rate on Thursday, then partly sunny, a high of 45. The weather's been brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. Also, this hour is brought to you by the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Pena & Kahn. Plug in virtual reality, and Dominic's Fine Cigars. Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at actually it's out on Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days. Now, one of the stories we covered today, Talk of the Sound, broke it first, as they always do. Everybody else picked it up. 14-year-old facing sexual assault charges in an alleged incident at New Rochelle High School and more. And with us to talk about that, again, and more, is the managing editor and the publisher of Talk of the Sound, considered the source since 2008. Bob Cox, good morning. Good morning. Whoops, wrong one, sorry.
Good morning.
Good morning, Bob. It's good to see you. The hits just keep on coming. We don't know much yet about this assault, or do we?
What we know is that it was reported on Wednesday by the victim to the school, and they called the police. The victim was taken to Montefiore, New Rochelle Hospital. It happened in the past. That probably means Monday or Tuesday, because school's been on break for the past month. So the 14-year-old boy was arrested. He's being charged as a juvenile, and because it's two juveniles involved, the police aren't releasing any further information. So unless it leaks out, we're really not going to know much more about what happens in this case, because it's going to go through the family court system.
Now, do we know how far back it goes? Did they give any sense of what when the event took place?
Well, as I said, I mean, I think they said in the past.
That'd be before the break, yeah.
No. It said it happened in the past, and it was reported on a Wednesday. So from that, I take it was the Monday or Tuesday earlier last week.
Oh, okay.
Not that. I mean, I didn't get the sense that it happened a month ago.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
But we don't know. I mean, we don't know.
Now, do we know the level? In other words, there's touching, there's groping, there's rape. I mean, do we know where on that scale?
It was reported in the police incident report as a sexual assault, but neither the police nor the district attorney will release any information as to what the actual charges are. So we don't know that either.
Okay. Have you been hearing from parents and the like, and people concerned, or are they just taking a wait-and-see attitude?
I haven't really heard too much about it. A few people were concerned. I think they should be more concerned because, as I mentioned in my original article when I broke the story, we just had the arrest of a teacher who was alleged to have repeatedly sexually assaulted a 15-year-old girl. The initial charges in October were for incidents in April, May, and June. And then he left the school district in June, although the district says that the allegations have nothing to do with his leaving. But then a few weeks later, he was charged with 10 more counts of sexual assault related to bringing the victim to his apartment in White Plains. So when you add the two together, we have sexual assaults occurring in the high school in April, May, June, and January. So 4 out of the last 9 months, you had sexual assaults occurring in the high school, and they're all being reported after the fact, so that apparently only the victim and the perpetrator alleged knew about these.
Of those 4, how many were by teachers on students? And
Well,
how
no,
many was-
the guy who was arrested, the social studies teacher, the allegation was that he had assaulted the girl in April, May, and June.
I got
And then now we have an incident in January. So what's troubling to me is that sexual assaults can occur in the high school, and people don't know about it when it's happening. I would like to know where exactly the sexual assaults are occurring and what time of day, before school, after school, during school, because it raises real questions about school security. One of the things I've been harping on a bit has been the lack of CCTV cameras in our schools. This has been an issue that's been raised in security audits going back to 2009 and has not been addressed.
And you've mentioned it several times on this program.
Yeah, I think it highlights the fact that when you combine in the false fire alarm poles that have been complained about by a number of parents at the high school, the swastikas at the high school, and these instances of sexual assault, and of course what happened with Brian Stamp stabbing a kid and then being able to exit the building. There's a fundamental lack of security at the high school, and no matter how many times they have meetings about it or talk about it, the reality is that they haven't actually done anything about it, as evidenced by the fact that these things continue to happen. I mean, I just don't see how you can have repeated instances of sexual assault in a public school building over a period of months and you don't have any information about it in real time. What there should be, and what's been recommended in the past, is CCTV cameras throughout the building, inside and outside, and somebody monitoring those cameras in real time.
Now, Bob, you've been I don't know if you still are, but you have been on the safety committee at the school. This must come up fairly regularly, or at least over intermittent periods.
Well, as I said, first of all, I can't talk about some things because I was privy to them as a member of the safety committee. But in my reporting, I've been able to obtain past security audits going back to 2009. And quite frankly, it's kind of common sense, right? You don't need a security expert to tell you that you should have hardwire alarms on your windows and your doors, and you should have cameras. Obviously, we don't have that. And what's troubling to me is when the public has raised questions about it at various board meetings and town halls, we invariably get the pushback that, we can't talk about it because of safety considerations. And to me, that's just a cop-out. It's a way of getting around the fact that they have failed to implement the recommendations that they've been getting for many years, and which are common sense. In my view, there shouldn't be a single square inch of school grounds that can legally be covered by cameras, so not bathrooms, not locker rooms, that doesn't have camera coverage, and that includes the classrooms and the stairwells.
What do we know about that, though? Again, my guess is Bob Cox, the managing editor of Talk of the Sound, considered the source since 2008. What do we know about how much of a difference would that make? For example, and I'm only asking this boilerplate, the types of incidences that you've reported and that we now know have happened, are they a statistical anomaly? Or is this common in schools, this kind of problem at this rate? Do we know?
Well,
it's a boilerplate question. I honestly don't.
I don't know what sort of the government statistics are of sexual assaults in school. I would just say, as somebody who had a daughter in New Rochelle High School last spring, she's graduated. It's deeply troubling to me that a teacher was able to sexually assault a student repeatedly and nobody in the building knew about it. Now, that's also another question. Do we actually believe that they didn't know about it? Do we think that the guy just suddenly decided to resign, or was he pushed out? And that's a whole other issue, because there is something called a silent resignation, which is illegal, which is that if the school district knows of allegations of sexual assault and they allow somebody to just slip away, like through a resignation, without actually turning them over to the police or to Child Protective Services, that's a crime.
You've raised another question. I was talking about this with Mike Duffy last week. He's a defense attorney, but he more famously, if you will, was the head of investigations at the DA's office and has been a cop on the beat in Yonkers and a detective. Do a crime when it takes place, and this is my own view, and we'll just juxtapose it with your wisdom. A crime that takes place at a high school, a crime is a crime is a crime, and the police ought to be involved. Do schools agree with that notion, or do they try and suppress that, and specifically in our school district?
I think the track record's pretty clear that the school district does not proactively report crimes to the police, and they do not cooperate fully with police, no matter what statements they give out.
Why? Well, why do you think? I mean, obviously, you're not in their heads, but
Well, I think there's certainly a big part of it is the fact that in any sort of suburban community or any community like New Rochelle, you have a real concern among the vested interests in the community that the school system be perceived to be of high quality and of safe, a safe place and things like that. So you would have, the city government, and you would have the real estate business, and you would have all of the property owners in New Rochelle, all of the business owners in New Rochelle. They want the schools to be perceived as high quality schools and safe schools because at the end of the day, they're sort of managing the portfolio of value of a community, and especially if you're a homeowner. And so think about somebody who is trying to make a decision to move their family to the suburbs, okay, as a scenario. So they're sitting in, let's say New York City,
or Queens or whatever.
They want to move now they have a couple of young kids, and they're running out of space, and they're going to go into school. So they decide they want to move to the suburbs. Now that person, that family, they can move to certain sections of New York. They could put their kids in private schools, but they can move to New Jersey, to Connecticut, to Westchester, Long Island. And so they go through the process of making a decision, okay? And it's a big decision because it's going to impact your life. It's going to impact your kids' lives. For most people, it's the single biggest financial investment that they'll make. Most of their wealth will be tied up in the value of their home.
Of course.
So it's a big deal to make a decision of where you're going to buy a home and settle down roots and have your kids go to school. So having done all that, nobody wants to be told they were wrong psychologically. They just don't want to accept the idea that they were wrong.
I know it from callers.
That they don't want to hear it. So there's I think it's normal human instinct. I'm not blaming anybody for it.
Yeah.
But it makes it very difficult to penetrate through that wall with people to get them to understand that cheering for your school is not sufficient when there are serious problems at the school. And to a large extent, that cheerleading and sort of that willful blindness to problems is actually exploited then by the people who actually are running the schools. Because let's remember, the people that are running our schools, by and large, they're not from here. They don't own property here. They don't have a business here. They don't have a home here. They're not sending their kids to school here. So you can go back any number of years. In the past 10, 15 years, we had Dr. Feu from Long Island. We had Brian Osborne from New Jersey. We had interim Superintendent Korsta from Massachusetts. We had Richard Organishak, who was from Long Island. So we have people running.
Since Linda Kelly, I guess.
Right. So that's right. That's been a long time. Most people don't even know who that is in this community. So if you go back, whatever that is, 15 years or so, the people at the top of our district have no stake in the community other than they get a paycheck from here, and it's a point on their resume if they're thinking they're going on to do other things. And that's also true for a number of other people in leadership positions. So to that extent, I think that when people have problems or there are screw-ups whether they committed themselves or whether they're other people, they exploit the mindset of the homeowners and the families who've made the decision to move here to play off of that mindset and get to convince them that they should sort of shoot the messenger, right? Or you often,
for example,
or you often mention that the tagline for Talk of the Sound is what?
Consider the source.
Right. Well, so that came from Richard Organishak, the superintendent back in the late 2000s, who would say that all the time.
Consider the source. Oh, so it was started out as a pejorative.
Yeah, to say you shouldn't listen to this person. This is just a disgruntled parent, crackpot. He's making all this stuff up. None of it's true. And there was plenty of people on the school board, in the administration, and in the community who were all in on that. So in that time period, I would have people come up to me after meetings or in the street and yell at me and curse at me and be really nasty.
You still have that now?
No.
Not as much?
No, nothing remotely close to that.
Okay, that's good.
I'm not saying that I'm welcome with open arms by everybody, but I'm talking about that there was genuine hostility that was being fomented by the board leadership and especially by the superintendent at public meetings, who was routinely going after me. And he was really playing off the community's desire to have these things not to be true. Now, the reason that that's mostly gone away, and I want to say, like, it's not 0, but it was at a 10, so now it's at a 2, okay, is because it turned out that the stuff I was reporting was all true.
It all got validated.
There really were all these things happening.
I just want to remind folks, you're listening to Radio Westchester. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am he. This is our long-form interview. We do one each day from 9 to 10 o'clock. It is 9:22. Our guest is Bob Cox. He's the managing editor and publisher of Talk of the Sound, considered the source, and now I know the derivation of that, considered the source since 2008, and we're talking about the latest issues regarding, well, in this case, sexual assault allegations and violence in the schools. Bob, is the larger question, well, at least it seems to me, there were two questions here. One, how forthright and transparent the system is, the board is. But the other issue is how safe really is our school? Or are our schools? I don't want to do George Bush. Is our schools? How safe are they? Can we make them safer? I mean, we brought in this guy from Baltimore who was supposed to address safety. Is it? Do you think we're in a better, at least, framework for safety?
No. First of all, Dr. Bryce, who you're talking about from Maryland, was not brought in to address safety.
What the hell was he brought in for then? Because that's what I thought he was brought in for.
Well, I mean, the stated purpose of that committee was about addressing the culture and climate within the schools and talking about things like getting students access to more support services, counseling, things like that. And none of it was about looking at what had just happened at the time.
I know. I think I've told you. I'm going to share this story again. I was at a press conference with the guy, and I just had to call an end to my participation in it because he said he was putting together a task force to solve the problem. And I said, oh, good, but what is the problem? He said, there is no problem.
Right.
I said, well, how can you put a task force together if there's no problem? And he said, well, our intent is just to be sure that people who don't have opportunity get it. And I said, but that's not what just happened.
Right. Right. Well, there's a conceit in that logic, right? Which is that the reason that the kids stabbed fellow students, right, is because they don't have opportunities.
Now you're going where I wanted to go.
Well, they don't because they don't have opportunities. In other words, Valerie Schwab and EJ, who we talked about last week, they're not the victims. The victims are Zena Brown and Brian Stamps.
Yeah.
They're the victims.
That's exactly what I felt that night at that.
And I think that listeners can evaluate that logic for themselves, but I think a lot of people in this community feel that way. Okay. And they're very passionate about it. I think that's what is a big part of the opposition to school resource officers, police officers in the school. I think it's a big part of what the concern has been about Dr. Fayho, about the termination of the HR director who is African American, that the black community in particular, but the minority community is not respected by the powers that be in the community, especially the school district, and that it manifests itself in the kind of problems that we just were talking about school violence and things like that. There's another swath of the community that feels that this is a lack of discipline and control and consequences. And so you have this divide, which manifests itself in the news most recently with bail reform, right?
Sure.
With the desire to decriminalize marijuana. The whole idea behind all this stuff is that minority people suffer disproportionately from this, and therefore, getting rid of the consequences for it is more fair. We've seen some of the results of things like bail reform.
Yeah, really.
And they're great for the accused, not so great for the victims because they have been repeating their crimes in some cases.
Hopefully you would agree, but I'm not seeking that per se. But isn't there a sweet spot here somewhere where we can do more for people who are less fortunate? We could do more for minorities, and we can do more about how they have been historically treated, but also not throw away all the rules of civilized society either.
Well, I mean, to take it back to the school,
Yeah.
right, and the case of the student who is alleged that she was sexually assaulted last week, there are things that can be done to address the actual problem, right? Like the Bryce Task Force and things like that, the various school committees that the board put together. They were never intended. Their stated purpose was never to address the actual problem of what had transpired. Okay.
I'm laughing because even the people that would pursue the agenda that we're discussing, by pursuing their agenda, they're saying that there's a problem, but they refuse to accept the problem and call it what it is. So even they're being intellectually disingenuous.
Well, I mean, so I was on it's called the SAVE committee for a little while last 2018. I was thrown off the committee.
What did you do?
Too honest.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought. Go ahead.
But I've been on the rescue committee. These are two different laws. So I always say the rescue committee, or basically the buildings committee, is that you don't want a brick to fall on your head.
I remember that.
And the SAVE committee is that you don't want someone to throw a brick at your head. So one's about security, one's about the facilities. Things like cameras are both, right? Perimeter fencing is both. Securing the doors at, let's say, the high school is both, because the doors are part of the physical infrastructure, cameras are part of physical infrastructure, but the reason you install them is for safety reasons and security reasons. So I've been involved in this issue for a number of years now in these committees, and I would point out they're the only two committees that a school district has that are actually state mandated. So these are official committees that have actual statutory responsibilities to do certain things for a school district. And we've discussed these things, and there's been recommendations made. Obviously, there's been outside consultants hired for years. I mean, going back to Columbine. Okay, so we're going on 20 years now. And things like hardwiring alarms onto doors and windows, putting up...
Why not? At the end of the day, I realize I may be just echoing why not? There has to be a reason.
Well,
it can't just be money.
I think, no, it's not money, because in the last 10 years, the district has spent about $40 million on security. Okay, so there's been plenty of money to spend, and that's just the budget, right? There's also grant money.
Then why not?
Well, I think the number one reason is the teachers union.
Why does the teacher why would they not want more security?
I've asked the head of the union that very question about these issues, and he shrugs. Why would the teachers union not want to have the doors hardwired with alarms? Why would they not want to have cameras?
There's always a reason, Bob.
Why would they not want to have cameras in their classroom or pointed at the doors to their classroom?
Conjecture. Why?
Well, no, they've told me.
Why?
Because they don't want to be observed on camera. They don't want to be on camera. And secondly, they want to have the ability to open the doors to their classrooms if they're exterior doors, either to let, if it's too hot or it's too cold, so they can fiddle with the temperature in the room, get a nice breeze.
So that's fine, unless it's against the rules.
It's not fine at all. These are emergency exit doors that are being opened.
Well, then it's not fine. You're absolutely. I thought you meant the door of their classroom.
I'm talking about the exterior doors, which in a number of cases there are classrooms throughout the district that there are exterior doors in classrooms.
Well, fix the air conditioning. I'm preaching to the choir. Fix the air conditioning.
Well, that was my response, which is you've turned basically a facilities HVAC issue into a security issue, because once you pierce the security veil of the building, okay, by just opening up a single door, you've now invited in whatever wants to come through that door.
Okay, I have to ask a question, and this is my own cynicism that I've developed. This is not Bob Cox's cynicism, it's my own. Ever since this issue came up, ever since the New Raw people changed the agenda from somebody getting killed to a racial one, ever since I realized that the reason, at least in my view, that the school didn't stick with lockdown is they didn't want to have to report incidents. How much of this is that they do not want to have to manage the bad behavior? How much is that they don't want to have those statistics? How much is that they'd actually have to deal with these problems more assiduously than they do?
You're talking about the district leadership?
Yes.
I think it's a combination of factors, because these are individuals and they all have...
I don't trust what I hear anymore, and that's
why
I'm hopeful for
different
favor.
individuals have different points of view, and so it's the board is 9 people. They act as a body, but they don't all have the same point of view. So, I would be reluctant to pin it down as to any one thing.
Well, let's go back at that time, during when it was going on. At around the time of the murder of Valerie Schwab, it seemed to me that the school district was reluctant to report on these kinds of incidences.
Well, I think that's historically been the case.
Yeah.
It doesn't just go back 2 years. I think that the one thing that Talk of the Sound has done is that I'm sort of like a lighthouse in the desert, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I understand that.
Everybody can see me, and so and react to whatever I'm putting out. So now, if you're somebody who works in the government, whether it's the school district, which is a government, or the police, or whether it's the municipal government, and you know something, right? You now have a way to get that information out, which is that you send it to me. Mm-hmm. Now, I will evaluate it. I don't just rebroadcast what anyone says. But that's how I get so much information, is because I, started out as just myself doing what I did in 2008, and I had a couple of readers a day.
And now you have sources, too.
Well, and so now, yes, but I mean, the reason I have sources is because, I banged away at reporting out stuff as best I could with what limited information I got. But then people started coming to me. Did you know this? Did you know that? And that's built up over time. And so that now I'm sort of the go-to person that if you have some story to tell. So, this case of the sexual assault that was reported last week, that wasn't the school district coming forward to say, hey, this thing happened and here's what we're doing about it. It also wasn't anybody in the city government or the police department. What happened was that one of my listeners...
What are your sources?
A reader, I should say, heard the police call to the high school and said, hey, I think something happened at the high school. That led me to then start making inquiries, and I was able to piece together what happened. I asked for a statement from Dr. Fayhu, the superintendent of Rochelle schools, said, I'm doing a story about this. Several hours later, I got a statement, which then also turned out to be something that they sent to parents at the high school, which they also sent out to the staff at the high school. And that's how it became a story, where the district was actually confirming what I had been told and what I was hearing elsewhere. And then the police issued a statement as well. But the point being is that if not for my reader hearing that police call, and I didn't hear it, I would not have known to start making inquiries, and that story would have never come out, and we would not know about it today. And so that raises another question, which is, okay, so how many other sexual assaults and other incidents have there been like it that the public was not made aware of? And I'm willing to bet that there's been some.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Bob Cox. We'll finish up the story about this alleged sexual assault and the safety of the schools, and then we'll talk about another issue involving the board president. But right now, this is Radio Westchester. We'll take a break for the weather. Acknowledge our sponsors, and we'll be back with Bob Cox, a managing editor and publisher of Talk of the Sound, considered the source since 2008. Alrighty, let's take a look at the weather. It is 36 degrees, getting up to 47 today. Mainly cloudy, much cooler than over the weekend, obviously, but still above average with highs around 43 degrees. Tonight, mostly cloudy with lows around 35. Tomorrow morning, breaks of sun, some sun, then scattered rain showers developing during the afternoon, highs around 45. Later on, it'll clear, but get down to 38 degrees. On Wednesday, we've got a mixture of sun and clouds. The high 52, nice day. The overnight low will be 36, though. On Thursday morning, more rain, then partly sunny. The high will be 45. Friday, mostly sunny skies. The high will be 30 degrees. Now, we're giving you an early look. Don't get nervous, but we're tracking a potential winter storm on Saturday. It's still too early for the exact details and any snow totals, but there is a chance for accumulating snow eventually, though changing to rain as we get into highs at 40 degrees on Saturday. Saturday night, rain ends, clouds clear late, though, lows around 29. And the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And as we head into the bottom of the hour, we are supported by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne & Con, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. Also, Dominic Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. You're listening to the long-form segment of Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am he. This is Radio Westchester, the station at the train station. You can listen on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Periscope. I'm about to sneeze, but I'm holding it off. And, of course, on RadioWestchester.com. We're available on the app MyTuner Radio. And we now return to our conversation with Bob Cox, managing editor and publisher of Talk of the Sound. Bob, overall, how safe do you think our schools are? And if you were still on the safety committee, what would you be recommending?
I don't want to alarm people because, for example, the high school is a very large school. So it's going to have more incidents, let's say, in a high school in a smaller town.
Of course.
But I guess the way I would put it is the repeated statements that have been made for years every time there's an incident that the safety or security of our students is our number one priority is demonstrably false. I would say that it's not even in the top 10. The bigger concerns are about union relations, about PR, about basically protecting people's careers. You can go on down the list, but students are not a major concern, despite the fact that this is stated over and over again. And, I could pick many examples, but just to bring it back to the issue of just CCTV systems, security systems in our schools, okay? When they have these reports, or when it gets discussed in meetings, the board and the administration will say, we can't talk about it. We can't tell you anything about anything. But you don't need to have access to some secret report to go to the schools and see for yourself that they don't have perimeter fencing. Okay, so there's multiple ways for somebody to stroll onto the campus. They don't have exterior cameras facing out of the building, so they have no situational awareness of what's happening outside the school. The high school has a few, but most schools don't have any. The high school is the only building of the 11 schools that has a central command where they have monitors for the cameras. But of the other schools, even the few cameras they have no way to monitor them. Mm-hmm. So they can look back on the videotape, but they can't do anything in real time. And there's nobody that's actually has a job, which is CCT camera monitor. In other words, there's nobody sitting at a desk looking at these screens.
How do they justify this? Why is my head spinning?
I wouldn't say that they justify it. I would say that people in the community are perfectly willing to accept the nonsense that the school system is making a priority out of protecting their kids when they aren't. And so, I'll go back to this. How can you have students being raped in the schools and the school doesn't know it? How can you have 20 instances of people painting or drawing swastikas in our schools and they have no information about that? How can you have all these felony fire alarm pulls and they have no information about it?
How many of those were there?
Our committee pulled up data going back 5 years. I mean, there's 100. I don't know. I didn't really count exactly how many. And of course, you wouldn't know exactly whether it was a felony fire alarm pull until you gathered evidence. Mm-hmm. But just to stick to the high schools, the high school has more security than any school. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the reason that they're a good example to talk about is because the other, whatever I would say about the high school, the rest of the schools have far less. Okay, but I would say district-wide, mm-hmm. probably about 10% of school grounds, inside and outside, are covered by cameras. To me, that number should be 100%. Mm-hmm. You get people say, well, it's a violation of privacy. It's not a violation of privacy. You're in a public place. You're in a mm-hmm. public school. Some people, the union, the teachers, they don't want to be on camera. Too bad. So I had one person who was on the committee with me, who was a teacher, who said, not in my classroom. Okay. And I had to look at him and say, not your classroom.
For a second, man. What about if we were to compare it to other schools? What do most other schools have?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't compare it to other schools. I compare it to casinos in Las Vegas. I compare it to airports. I compare it to corporate office buildings. I compare it to football and baseball stadiums. We spend a ton of money on security. Okay. So we have every right to expect world-class security. Whatever is being done at the MGM Grand or whatever is being done at JFK Airport or whatever is being done at Citicorp Center or the Empire State Building, that's what we should be doing. Okay? Whatever that is. Whatever the maximum security is, because the fact is we do have these vulnerable populations mm-hmm. in these schools, and mm-hmm. they ought to be protected to the fullest extent. And obviously, that includes administrators. They have to be protected from administrators. They have to be protected from teachers, because we've had administrators, okay, the head of special education at the high school, okay, was basically terminated for inappropriate contact with young boys in his office just in the last couple of years. We had a case, of course, the famous Jose Martinez case at Isaac, where he was using his office mm-hmm. there to sexually assault young boys. I don't mean to disgust your listeners, but I talked to detectives who investigate mm-hmm. that case. They used a black light to investigate his office. They said that it looked like a Jackson Pollock painting.
No.
Use your imagination.
I know what that is.
Okay. So obviously the guy who was arrested, the social studies teacher. So I would say to parents, and I'm one, okay, and my kids all went through that school. My daughter just graduated in June. How can it be that any sexual assaults are occurring at the school and the district doesn't know about them in real time and obviously intervene to stop them?
Solve that.
Well, and also what's happening with our security staff. And if we have 100 cameras, in the building, or 200 or 500 cameras in the building, if nobody's looking at them, okay, then they don't serve any purpose either. So, but they know all this. They've known this for 15 years. Also, it's just common sense. But they have had reports about this going back 15 years that they need to do more about this. And they aren't. And I'll give you one last bit, and then maybe we can go to the other thing, because I know people want to talk about the alcohol issue.
I do want to get to that.
One of the recommendations that they made a number of years ago after Sandy Hook was to hardwire the doors and put cameras facing the door, so that if a door opened, and there's like 47 doors at the high school, exterior doors. If a door opened, the camera will show you who just went in or who just went out. Is that a teacher sneaking out to smoke a cigarette, or is that guy with a machete?
I'm shocked that we don't have such cameras.
So they did install alarms, but they're not hardwired back to a central command. So when the door's opened, it's not like somebody in the central command center is aware of it, and they're battery operated. You got that? They're battery operated alarms. Mm-hmm. So when the battery dies, the alarm doesn't go off anymore, and there isn't anybody checking to see if those batteries are still working. You don't do that. You hardwire everything. You don't just put in batteries. I mean, that's like a child. So it's just a joke, but people are being hurt. And, if you didn't understand it with Valerie Schwab, and you didn't understand it with Brian Stamps, okay, and you didn't understand it with John Fraioli allegedly repeatedly raping a student, you have another rape in the building alleged last week. And so I don't want to hear what I hear all the time. We heard it again at the last board meeting from Dr. Fahu. I'm meeting with our security consultants. We had really good conversations and blah, blah, blah. But they're not doing anything. So you can have conversations all you want. If I can walk up to the high school and see that there's no perimeter fencing, that the doors are left open, that there's no exterior cameras, if I know from walking around the building when I'm in there that there's plenty of blind spots, that there's no cameras in the stairwells where students are having sex, doing drugs. This is widely known. Widely known. Everybody in the building knows this.
Go back, please.
No, the stairwells are a well-known hookup spot for kids to have sex at the high school. This is well known. Okay, they know that, and they don't have cameras in the classroom. So
that wouldn't happen if there was a camera on that stairwell.
Well, I would just say that if you have the number one reason to have the cameras is for armed shooter response.
Of course, but
all right. So if you have an armed shooter, an armed threat in the building, and you're trying to monitor them, and so the SWAT team shows up and they go to the central command, and all of a sudden they can't find the person. Why? Well, because they're in a classroom or they're in the stairwells. So they have all these blind spots throughout the building, and it's a majority of the building. That's what people don't understand. It's most of the building is blind.
It's 9:48. Bob Cox is our guest. We're going to talk. Obviously, this is a conversation that we will continue to have over the weeks and months ahead. Bob, there's a story that you've been covering, and you called it the ALDS. Or what is that? That alcohol was served at ALMS. What's that?
Oh, no, it's Albert Leonard.
Oh, Albert Leonard Middle School?
Middle School.
What's that about?
I thought you were talking about the American
No, I'm losing my mind. Not that ended.
Sore subject.
Go ahead.
That was an instance where the board president, Amy Moselli, gave a gift of bottles of Italian sparkling wine, otherwise known as Prosecco, out at school. From what I understand, she gave it out to her kids' teachers. And
this for holiday?
It was back in December. And, it's not, an unheard of practice. But I wrote about it because I thought that, as the board president, she should be held to a higher standard, and the board's own policy is very clear about no alcohol, in any of the schools for any reason.
Even gifts.
there's
is what you're
no,
saying, because-
as I've said to people, there's no exemption if the bottle of alcohol has a red ribbon around it. It's just if it's alcohol, period. In any way, shape, you can bring it in a paper
time
cup.
anybody's ever given a gift of a bottle to somebody in school?
Of course not.
Okay. All right. I just want to get that out.
Of course
there.
not. But you have, first of all, the fact that just so you understand, it's against the law, right? So it's I don't even know, but it's probably a misdemeanor. But it's against the law to have alcohol, just like it's illegal to have drugs, drug paraphernalia, weapons, tobacco. It's all banned. I mean, it's common knowledge that public school grounds are drug-free, alcohol-free, tobacco-free. That's why things like vaping is a new problem.
But I didn't know that you couldn't give a bottle out as a gift to another teacher. I honestly,
You can.
To me, that seems so.
You can.
But it's against the law.
No, you can do it, not on school grounds.
Okay,
So
she
if
should
you
have
want
sent
to-
it to their home or something.
Whatever. Have a party off at somebody's home. Take people out to a restaurant.
Now, don't you think that this is probably an innocent mistake?
What do you mean innocent?
I don't think she knew it.
She didn't know that there was a policy against having alcohol on school grounds?
I think she probably didn't know. I mean, it's my surmise that she probably didn't know that giving it out as a gift in that way was against the rules. I mean, we'll ask her, but
Well, I did ask her.
and what did she say?
Nothing. I sent questions to her and texted her and emailed and sent questions to the board all last week, and she didn't respond at all. She still hasn't responded to any of it. So if you can get her to answer the question, that's fine. But I really think that that's tossing a life preserver to somebody unnecessarily because she's the board president.
I understand that.
Okay. And so if she doesn't know at this point, having been on the board several years, been vice president, if she doesn't know that drugs, alcohol, tobacco are not allowed on school grounds, has she been asleep? This is well known. This is not a question.
I don't know what to say about it because it seems
Well,
to
there's
me to
no-
be
there-
highly innocent, but you're telling me it's against the rules. I didn't realize that you couldn't give alcohol as a gift to someone.
I didn't say you can, Bob. You can
No,
give alcohol as a gift.
but you can't do it on school grounds. No, I understand
it's
that.
Not that
I
you
understand.
can't. It's not that you can't give a gift on school grounds. It's that you cannot possess, distribute, or consume alcohol on school grounds. That's the law. That's the board policy. In fact, there's another part of the law which has something called violence and disruptive incident reporting, and it's a reportable offense. Even the finding of an unattended bottle of alcohol is a reportable offense. Anything to do with alcohol, drugs, and tobacco is prohibited. Okay? So it's not, I don't, you keep talking about like it's an innocent.
Well, that's how it appears to me. I'm not saying I'm right.
What,
I'm
based
just,
on
you know,
what?
I would like
You don't
to
know
think-
anything about it, so I'm just basically
No,
curious
I
as to
don't.
why you have an opinion.
Well, no, because I have an opinion because it seems like something that anyone would do. No, what I'm doing is confessing my ignorance of it, quite frankly. Because to
Well,
me,
I think
it
you're
seems
projecting your own
Yes, of course I am.
ignorance about
Yes,
the law
no, I am.
onto the board
Yes,
president,
I am.
which I don't think makes any
Absolutely.
sense.
Because it just seems to me even the law itself is a little silly. But if
Is
someone's
it?
giving a gift to fellow professionals,
But Bob, there's no rule against giving gifts, and there's no rule about giving
she
gifts
just
of
shouldn't have done it on
alcohol.
the property.
You cannot bring
No,
alcohol
I-
for any
Bob,
reason.
Bob, you win. You win. This is a TKO. I get it. It just is shocking to me. But hey,
Well,
what
the
do I know?
defense that's been offered by my critics on social media has been
You have no
that
critics,
it's,
Bob.
well, even people who agree with me on some things are saying that this is a silly law, that it doesn't apply to adults, giving gifts to adults. It's something that's been done for a long time, and there's a whole range of explanations
See,
and excuses.
that seems sensible to me, but and
don't
I
have
agree with you on most things. So
Well, but if so, the attitude seems to be, and you seem to have it too, that there's this board policy, and it somehow should be there should be a carve out for gifts.
No, here's where I do agree with you. If it's the law, it's the law. You got to do it.
It's the law.
And I understand that, but it just seems to me to be a little bit of a silly law, But that doesn't mean it doesn't need to observe.
You
be
think
observed.
that it's silly that there should not be alcohol in the schools? Why would you think that?
No, I'm talking about an exception to the rule, not the rule.
Well,
I'm talking about, I would like any other caveat, with the exception of an adult giving a professional a gift that might involve alcohol.
So if an employee is found to have alcohol in their locker or their office,
or a teacher,
okay, then that's okay. It's okay for an adult who works in the school district to have alcohol in their office or their classroom or whatever. That's okay.
For the purposes of giving a gift,
well, if I get caught with a bottle of whiskey in my office and I say this was a gift, that makes it okay.
You should have taken it home, sir.
Well, but I was going to take it home. I just got it recently and I was going to take it home. I just forgot.
Okay, who gave it to you?
I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to get anyone else in trouble.
I understand. You probably need to make it black and white, but that's
I don't need.
Not you.
I don't need to make it black and white.
The law is black and white.
It is black and white.
No, I didn't say you, Bob Cox. I mean, one needs to make it black and white.
It's literally black and white because it's on the printed page.
I understand,
and it is very clear. But I think that the people who are trying to make excuses about this have their own agenda.
Well, I don't. My agenda is ignorance.
Well,
which I'm very good at.
but it's certainly the agenda is certainly not the safety, security, and health and well-being of students. It has to do with something else, which is, and you pick what it is, that we want to be able to do something that is not allowed, or we want to.
I would not counsel them that. I would counsel them to say, "Boy, that was a mistake on my part. I shouldn't have done it. I realized that. Wow, I wasn't thinking." That's what I'd like to hear from the person.
Maybe, but I think that when you sit down and you start making gift cards out and putting bottles in gift bags and you make a dozen of these things and then bring them to the school and start handing them out, that's a deliberate act. It's not a mistake.
No, the notion of doing it is a mistake. The notion of doing it is the mistake.
Well, but let's consider how this would work. Okay, a person.
It's a lot easier to buy. I've been there. You've been there. You buy 6 bottles. Let me give this cheap champagne and move on.
You have a dozen bottles of alcohol, and you want to give them out to the teachers at the holiday time. So I show up at the school, and I've got some kind of box or crate or something, and I've got my dozen gift bags full of alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So I show up at the front door, which is locked, and I push a button to get into Albert Leonard. And the security guard looks through the camera and says, okay, I'm going to let this person in. So they come in. Now the person goes to the security desk, and they've got this big box of alcohol. So they put it down on the floor, they set it down on the desk, and they sign in. The security guard can see what they have, right? They can see they're bringing in bottles of alcohol.
Yeah.
So you've now compromised that person. They're now also in on this violation. You now walk down the hallway to go around to different classrooms, or maybe there's a party that's happening that day, like a teacher appreciation party, and you bring the bottles there. Okay. Now, who's at that party? Well, a whole bunch of teachers and staff, maybe some administrators. So they're also now all involved. In this case, one of the bottles was not accepted for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know if it was rejected or the person was out sick, but whatever. So one of the bottles ended up being left in the main office at Albert Leonard, and it was sitting there since December through until January. So now the main office staff, the principal, the assistant principal, they're all aware of it. So probably you've got 20 people or more who are now aware of this reportable illegal act, and nobody reports it. So it's not as simple as saying one person gave a bottle of wine to somebody else. It's a matter of there's a whole bunch of people who have to ignore state law and board policy, and more to the point, when it's the board president doing it, it's saying that we're not actually going to enforce the policy. And I want to be clear, there isn't a policy that says no alcohol. There's a policy that talks about alcohol, drugs, drug paraphernalia, weapons, tobacco, a whole list of things are on that list. So we're now going to not enforce that policy, So now is tobacco okay? Can I go smoke a cigar at Albert Leonard? Can I go bring in a bottle of whiskey?
Please don't.
Can I bring in a weapon? Because it's all part of the same policy. And not for nothing, but board members take oaths to uphold the laws of the state of New York, and this is a law of the state of New York. So there really is no defending it.
Well, I would tell her next year to buy chocolates. Bob Cox, once again, thank you very, very much. We will see you again next week or when a story breaks. One of the things we do here, if Bob Cox breaks a story and it's hot, we'll put him on whenever those stories break. Bob Cox, editor-in-chief, publisher, Talk of the Sound, considered the source, and now I know the origin of that, as well the origin of the station at the station. Bob came up with that. Thank you for that, Robert. All right, folks, that slams the lid on our long-form. I can't talk. I've lost it at the end of the show. 4 hours does that to me. Well, that's the end of the show. Thank you very much, Bob Cox. I want to thank Vince Russo, George Latimer, Hezi Aris, Jake's Picks of the Week, and, of course, Tom Abenanti, and, of course, Bob Cox himself. We'll see you tomorrow one way or another. Take care. Have a great day.